Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Palm Coast City Council Workshop. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. It's 9 a.m. We're in the John Netz wing of City Hall. I'm calling this meeting to order. If you could, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and a short moment of silence. Keep the Sheriff's Office in your prayers with the passing of Cairo. And if you have any devices, please silence them at this time. Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Allison, if you could call the roll, please.
Mayor Norris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Panieri. Councilmember Gambaro.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
And Councilmember Miller is absent.
Thank you. We got word that he's sick, so no worries. It's just a workshop. We're going to open today's meeting with public participation. Please read the rules in the agenda. Please no defamatory comment or vulgar language if you can prevent it. And we'll slot 30 minutes for this, so please come forward if you have public comment. Yes, Mr. Stapleford.
And good morning, Randy Stapleford. I'm the Commissioner for the Florida Inland Navigation District. Glad to be here. I wanted to go over a couple items that have happened over the last couple weeks and embarrass a couple people who are behind me. It may be a couple people in front of me, but it won't be too bad. First, today's National First Responders Day, so for all the first responders and our chief back there, congratulate them for all they do. And I just chatted with the fire chief from Flagler Beach, and he will be working with our chief perhaps. They would like to get a grant for a fire rescue vessel for their county, so there's the chief up right here. So that's a possibility coming forward, so let's hope that can happen in the future. I wanted to give a special recognition, because I was unable to attend the Intracoastal Waterway cleanup that Elisa Roscoe put on. I have Elisa, I asked her to be here just so she can stand up and get a formal recognition from me. Elisa, would you stand up? And for those who are here. So it was an amazing, it was the 18th year where we donate $5,000 a year, but she did especially amazing this year, $1,600. I know the mayor was there giving out some coins. I wish I could have been there, but we've given a total $90,000 for that event. It was one of the biggest ones yet, and so they found some amazing items that were important to be picked up so they don't contaminate. So thank you, Lisa. And let me keep on going with my 3 minutes. We did a find outreach on the 16th, had a great attendance. I want to thank James Hurst. I asked him to be here because he fixed that Palm Coast Community Center looking amazing with pictures. James? There he is. How about a thank you for James? Also, I want to thank the daughter of the father over here of Miss Duffy, who did the singing of the national anthem. Thank you, sir, for having your young daughter, Laura, do the singing. She did an awesome job. Last week at the event, Eric Gibo, I'm going to go very quickly. I have a major announcement at the very end of this, so hopefully I don't go over too much. Eric did a great briefing on the future of the waterfront park. And so I looked at the check I have in my garage ready to give you folks for $586,000. I can't wait to give that to you. As far as the gazebo that's going to be there, I think somebody said, is that big enough for farmer's market? And the answer is absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that event. So the big question that was coming to me in my last 15 seconds here, is there going to be a vote on canal dredging? So I had been working about 5 years pushing why we need to have dredging in our public canals. And there are a lot of reasons I'm going to go over. Can I have 30 seconds more?
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. So Flagler is unlike many of our counties. We have fewer launching facilities. We have fewer boat ramps, public boat docking, mooring facilities, marina fishing and a variety of different piers for boats to use and utilize. If you compare us to the southern counties, one would say, well, what's the purpose of waterway assistance projects? And the definition of WAP, we call them WAP grants, designed to enhance waterway access and improve public access to the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway. What we have are public canals. That's where we keep most of our boats. We have 6,000 registered boats. We have 216,000 registered boats in the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway with the 12 counties. Most of them are south. So pushing the idea of what is the purpose, we have a group of new commissioners. They were listening to me finally. And so we took it to vote on Friday the 17th, and we unanimously voted in favor to allow the waterway assistance projects to incorporate public canals into our WAP grants. So from this day on, for the next generation of grants, the waterway assistance projects at a 50-50 grant for those counties under a population of 250,000, that's how we had to work this out, will be eligible for waterway grants for the canals, 50-50. So I couldn't be happier. That's the reason I really wanted to be pushing the last 5 years to make this happen. I know everybody that's on the canal is looking for waterways to get money for the waterways. The details of that program, I can brief individuals later. It's not too much different than any other waterway assistance project, but I'm glad to say today that you are all approved for 50-50 grants for the waterway dredging. It's very specific to dredging. You can't use it for anything else on that specific sort of a grant. So thank you very much, and thank you for the help of your team back here. They're very excellent. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I failed to mention, please don't discuss any item that is on the agenda for the first phase of public discussion. Okay, anyone else? Yes, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Vice Mayor, Honorable Councilman. Thanks to all our first responders, and God bless every one of them. I'm here today, and if I just heard Randy right, and I think I did, that sounds like it's transformative legislation to me. Only took you 5 years, eh, Captain? We took off, figures. But no, I'm just kidding. That's a tremendous accomplishment for our city, our county, and our state. We're getting our money back, and it's going to help the canals, and we certainly need help that way. The other topic I want to talk about is the upcoming Veterans Day Parade on the 11th of November. I hope everyone who's listening and who's here and present, please implore our veterans to come out. It's our way of honoring you for serving our country. You wrote a blank check for me and my family. We don't forget it. I will never forget it. And our community will never forget it. Our state will never forget it. And our country will never forget it. So we'd like you to be there. And we want to show our appreciation. We're going to have a lot of bands there, a lot of kids there. But most importantly, we're going to have a lot of veterans there. And I grew up in an area back in Vietnam. When you came home from Vietnam, our servicemen were treated deplorably. They couldn't wear the uniforms, baby killers, napalm lovers. Those were my colleagues. And I swore that day from now on, if I ever had an opportunity to do something about it, I will. I am on that Veterans Day Parade. It is a privilege to be on that Veterans Day Parade. And I'm glad you're all on that Veterans Day Parade float. I'm looking forward to that. And I really want everybody to come out. Show your appreciation for our veterans that served our country. We owe you a debt that we can never repay. At least give us an opportunity to at least show our appreciation on that day, and pray for you and your families for what you've endured for us, our country, and the world, because only the Americans are always first. We will always go in there and fight for another country, then leave and let their own land be their own land. And I want to thank all the heroes. Please, on 11/11, make this a big day. It starts at 10 o'clock. We're going to have flybys, bands. Every band that we've got from the schools are going to be there. So Thank you so much. Thank you for your service up there, ladies and gentlemen, on the dais, and everyone had the relatives. And I'm looking forward to the national anthem being sung by an angel. But thank you so much for this time today, and please sign up for the Veterans Day Parade on 11/11. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kershaw, I don't know if it's on the city website, but if you could share the dates and times. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, come on, Mr. Gary.
Gary Kunis, C-section. The doctor's office yesterday. They're all screaming about these 20-mile-an-hour signs. Spending $1.4 million is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. I gave you a suggestion on how you could prove it would work or wouldn't work, and today you haven't done anything about trying it. There's a sign on Florida Park Drive. It says, "Artistic child, 20 miles an hour." Nobody pays attention to that. Nobody sees it. And if you ask somebody about it, they don't know it. They haven't seen it. They haven't read it. It's ridiculous. I'll offer you a bottle of Johnny Walker Black Label Scotch if I'm wrong that it works. But in turn, and it doesn't work, you reimburse the $1.4 million out of your pocket back into our budget for something that's not going to function. People are not going to slow down for 20-mile-an-hour signs. It's not going to happen. I've seen it. I've been out there. I've been on patrol. It doesn't work. They're going to go 30. In fact, since those interior roads are not lined anymore with double lines, people are passing people now. They're not going to slow down. They're in a hurry. They got tunnel vision. They don't see the stop signs. They don't see the red lights. They just pour through them. Next year, we want to put gates up at stop signs and red lights. Stopped one person. They goes, "Oh, we're allowed to go through stop signs now because it says right turn on red." No, that applies to a traffic light, not a stop sign. Oh, I didn't read it that way. People read this stuff the way they want it to turn out for themselves. Okay? We need to stop wasting money. We have to stop wasting money on paying for people's run for Congress at the rec center. We don't need to pay for people's beach down in Flagler and Ormond because somebody complains that it's costing them too much. They knew the risk when they moved in there. They should be replacing their own sand, not us, not raising the sales tax to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one come forward, we'll bring it back to the dais. You got any follow-ups, Chief?
Yes, sir, just a couple. We'll see if I can figure this microphone out. Okay, yes, sir, just a couple. We're very grateful to Commissioner Staple for just a wonderful partner in the Florida Inland Water Navigation District is just so great to us. Thank you for recognizing our staff. And I look forward to working with Chief Cox on seeing what we can develop there. But the idea that there's a 50-50 match on dredging is certainly something that our community's been calling for. Thank you to Mr. Fuller for the great comments about the Veterans Day Parade. We participate as a fire department, and several of our places in the city participate. And currently, we haven't budgeted any money yet towards traffic signs for Mr. Kunis, but that is talk about potentially what we're going to do going forward after the traffic study. Then that's all from me.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything from the council? Vice Mayor?
Just really quickly, I want to also thank Randy Stapleford. I know you've worked tirelessly on this. We've had multiple conversations on your efforts and your push, and this definitely would not have happened without you. You've just been a pioneer for this and for our community. And as we look to hopefully make this canal dredging more affordable, I look forward to working with FIND and our state representatives and hopefully bringing more money into the community for canal dredging. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Commissioner Stapleford. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything else?
Just again, thanks, FIND and Randy, for being so supportive of us here in Flagler County. They did have their meeting in Flagler Beach. That might have helped with that vote, be hands-on doing it. So we're looking forward to that. And as far as the traffic flowing, we haven't really decided what to do yet, but we want to do something. And there are some examples where, for instance, in the city of Flagler Beach, I go there all the time, and I do think the 20-mile-per-hour signs that they put in there has slowed traffic down. It doesn't bring everybody down to 20, but maybe it brings them from 35 to 30, that kind of thing. So what we're looking to do is slowing and probably not spend a lot of money, try to do it as economically as possible.
Thank you, sir. You have anything, Councilman Gambaro?
Just, Randy, thanks for your leadership. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Stapleford. We're going to move on to our next item on the agenda, and that's our item E, presentations. The first presentation is about mobile food dispensing vehicles. Yes, Mr. Hanson.
Good morning, Michael Hanson for Community Development, also joined by Mr. James Hurst from Parks and Recreation. This particular agenda item came about as an ad hoc committee was put together to discuss the relevance and potential need to open up the ability to operate food trucks within the city. So right now, as a workshop, we're just looking at trying to get council direction about potentially expanding how we operate mobile food dispensing vehicles and our temporary commercial kitchen or vehicles. A little bit of background. Florida Statute 509.102 preempts municipality from being able to prohibit food trucks, essentially, from operating within the entirety of their jurisdiction. It's been on the books now since 2020. It's been amended back in 2023. The city currently is in compliance with the law as we allow for food trucks to operate through a special event permit. I'm sure you've probably dined at our great Food Truck Tuesday. That's been occurring on a monthly basis for over a decade, if I'm not mistaken, at this point. But as the popularity of food trucks has increased over time, the city has started seeing rogue mobile food dispensing vehicles popping up throughout parking lots across the city and along streets. Currently, any kind of operation where a food truck might be operating outside of a special event is prohibited within the city, and they are potentially subject to code enforcement action. With the creation of our ad hoc group over the last number of months, code enforcement has been waiting to get council direction before proceeding to enforce code enforcement upon any of these rogue food trucks operating. So our group has looked at the feasibility of identifying some sites that would allow for food trucks to operate outside of a special event permit. Initially on publicly owned lands outside of a special event permit, that would be ran by our Parks and Recreation Department. But during that process, we ended up at the decision of the former Community Development Deputy Director, expanded that search and for feasibility to open it up for potential private development too. And then I was brought on to the group about halfway through to wrap it up with a bow and put it together for a draft ordinance for the council and to help coordinate any kind of feedback that or direction that the council gives the group. So the ad hoc committee identified the 5 following publicly owned parks as potential sites for these food trucks. So we have Indian Trails Sports Complex, Holland Park, Ralph Carter Park, the Stage just down the road here in Town Center, and Seminole Woods Park. And the way the draft ordinance is written, it's set up so that way our city isn't bound to only those parks. Basically, how it's written as of right now with the draft, anywhere that the city has land that's zoned public, semi-public, or P&G, Parks and Greenway, this city, or technically any property owner that owned that land, would be able to develop a food truck site as an accessory use on land that's already developed with the principal use. Now, based on the direction that we received to include aspects for private development, as you can see here at the bottom, where it says mobile food dispensing vehicles, temporary commercial kitchens, where we've identified the commercial 2 and commercial 3 to develop what we would call essentially food truck parks on those 2 zoning classifications as a principal use. So for sites that aren't already developed with another use, it would have to come in. And we also did put in a P as in permitted with principal under MPD, and that's subject to the individual master plan development creating language in their development agreement that would allow it for principal use as well.
I have a question. Can we go back to that slide for a minute? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So my first question is, why are we not allowing this on industrial 1 and 2?
At the time for the ad hoc group, the direction was to limit it to commercial 2 and 3. We could potentially open it up to industrial 1 and 2. There's not a lot of industrial 2 land within the city, as the council is well aware of. Industrial 1, in my opinion, might be more applicable for something like this, rather than industrial 2. But it's ultimately up to the will of the council. So if the council wants us to change this to include for industrial 1 and 2, I'm more than happy to do so at your consensus.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I wasn't sure if there was some safety reason or environmental reason. I just wasn't sure why, and I don't know what the consensus of the ad hoc group was as far as their reasoning is concerned. I would agree with you that industrial 2 may not be as appropriate as industrial 1, but we can't really say, well, there's not much industrial 2 in the city anyways, because we do know that we've got the whole west that will likely be developed at some point in the future. So I don't want to really be short-sighted and say, well, because there's not a lot of industrial 2, it's kind of a non-discussion. I would be in favor of expanding this at the very least to industrial 1, because I do find that particularly in industrial parks, there can tend to be a dearth of lunch places for folks to go. So having the ability of a food truck to go in there and provide that might be useful. My other question, though, about this slide was, why are we requiring it to be a principal use rather than an accessory use? In other words, why does the property have to be, and maybe I'm wrong, in saying that it has to be the principal use, are we saying that nothing else can be on that parcel with a food truck?
So, ma'am, to clarify, some of the conversations I had with our former deputy director, as far as industrial, especially the heavy, related exactly to kind of safety, because we have those industrial performance metrics under section 4.14 of our land development code. So we were working on the assumption that it might be safer possibly for if you're going to bring your family out to enjoy a meal at a food truck to a more commercial site rather than an industrial park aspect. So that was part of the focus why we were looking at COM2, COM3 in that regards. That said, to ensure that those sites would potentially be safe, any kind of industrial zone property would have to go through all those industrial safety performance metrics under section 4.14 on site plan approval. The way this entire ordinance is written, any kind of development for site for a food truck does have to go through technical site plan application process and approval. So the reason for your third question, why we're looking at for principal use for COM2, COM3 as opposed to accessory use, is for those sites that are developed with a food truck park. Later on in the draft ordinance, it sets it up so that a principal mobile food dispensing temporary commercial site within COM2, COM3 could be set up with a park that would allow for up to 12 to 15 essentially food truck pads to operate in as a principal use. It was the intent of the ad hoc committee to stay away from an accessory use in COM2, COM3, so that way it would not directly overcompete our brick and mortar restaurant stores that or buildings that are paying impact fees and property taxes, sales tax to the city within COM2 and COM3.
Okay, and I can appreciate that, but I think that we're overreaching, and I think that we need to let the market be the market. So, in other words, capitalism will dictate whether or not a food truck that comes into a park is going to draw business away from a brick and mortar. And if the people want to eat at that dispensary, that's their choice. Also, I'm very aware that many of our brick and mortar shopping centers have association documents that govern the entire association that already limit certain businesses that can be in that same park. In other words, if there's already a nail salon, the association documents for that commercial park cannot have another nail salon, so they can't compete. So, in other words, if there's already an Italian restaurant, I would imagine that the association documents say we can't have, a sausage and peppers food truck because that's too close to another Italian type of food dispensary. So, it's my position that in looking at this, we should be allowing accessory food trucks, or I guess I should say food trucks in an accessory manner on COM2, COM3, and Industrial 1. I think I do tend to agree with you on Industrial 2 for safety reasons. And I think if we're looking at industrial parks, we probably are going to have somewhat of a mix of Industrial 1 and 2 eventually in the future. Anyways, we're already kind of seeing that now. So I don't think it's necessary to have these things on Industrial 2, but certainly Industrial 1. If we were to, and obviously it would take the direction of council, but if we were to allow food trucks as an accessory use on COM2, COM3, and Industrial 1, I would imagine we could still come up with certain parameters for those. In other words, they would have to have a certain parameter for, tables and things like that, right? I mean, so we could still adjust the ordinance to maintain a lot of the safety strictures that we have in the ordinance now with it being a principal use, right? I mean, we could still do that.
We have all those provisions already in the draft ordinance for both principal and accessory use as is.
Okay, so that would be it could be an easy adjustment, I would assume.
If it's the consensus of the council, it'd essentially just be putting an A next to the P and then putting a P in the Industrial 1 category as well.
I love that answer. It's so simple. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, with this section, before I move on, as you can see, I'm kind of a stickler for grammar, so I'm trying to take the levity to fix the misspelling of microbreweries. Full disclosure there, you can get rid of that W. I put the L in there for mobile food dispensing vehicles or temporary commercial kitchens, and anytime you see an L in our Land Development Code for particular use, it has a secondary section of additional language. So that's found here under section 4.22. This is an entirely new section that would relate only to mobile food dispensing vehicles and temporary commercial kitchens. The intent here is to establish these standards to ensure that we're compliant with the state statute. We do have two provisions of exemptions. The intent of this ordinance is not to impact the way the city operates any kind of mobile food truck operations in conjunction with a special event. So what we do with Food Truck Tuesdays would not be applicable to, bound by this set of rules. This ordinance is basically just builds upon that to allow for additional operation of food trucks within the city. And additionally, the second exception was for catered private events not longer than 6 hours on private land where no food products, sell, or services made available to the general public. This is put into place here so that hypothetically, if someone was going to have a wedding reception where they wanted to have a food truck operator cater their wedding party, the food truck operator's not soliciting themselves to the general public, but it would allow a mechanism as an exemption for that food truck to operate within the city to help cater a private event.
So thank you for that clarification on B, because this was confusing to me. This did not read what you just explained. So I don't know how the council feels, but when I read that, I mean, I literally put brackets around where no food product until public and said, what does this mean? So should it maybe be reworded to state exactly what you just stated? So in other words, if there's a private event where the MFDV is providing services to, privately, I don't know. I don't think this is very clear. So in our effort to make sure we're being very transparent with our law, do you agree, Councilman
Yeah,
Guevara?
it's not, it doesn't read.
Clarify that.
Yep.
that-
Yeah.
We can definitely tweak the language.
Thank you. I appreciate that because your explanation was much more clear than what it reads. Thank you.
Clarify that that's an exemption.
We'll do, sir. Further along, zoning applicability, this 4.22.02, that basically lays the groundwork for the different zoning districts that we're looking at. So if the council ends up deciding that they want to open it up for accessory use in COM 2, COM 3, I'll update this as well, and also that industrial 1 aspect. I want to draw your attention to the sentence here that reads, utilization of a mobile food dispensing vehicle shall be considered a customary ancillary use of sites developed as a park, performing arts center, or athletic complex within the city. This is a sentence with the intent that we put in here that makes it a statement of fact that it would essentially be ancillary, or a food truck operation would be ancillary to any kind of site that's developed with as a park or in the stage aspect. So that way we can go about being able to permit food truck operations at a site that's already developed that way. So currently, the stage, for example, is in the town center MPD. And down the road, as the vice mayor stated, that we'll be looking to bringing a lot of land out further west into the city.
Bless you.
Some of that might end up in, it's going to end up in an MPD, but depending on the nature of it, what could be zoned in the particular areas. This statement here, if the land is developed as a park, athletic complex, or performing arts center, it would allow for a food truck. So without having to go about changing the MPD. So I just want to draw the attention there, so that way when Mr. Hurst here has his team running food trucks out at the stage outside of a special event, that way it doesn't trigger a rezoning or an MPD amendment to town center or any other particular site down the way.
I have another question too about 4.22.03 here. If they do get a technical site plan approval, let's say that we have one food truck that is out in the same place, and I'm just throwing out a random day every Thursday. Would that site plan approval be good for a certain amount of time, or I would imagine they wouldn't have to get a site plan approval for every Tuesday?
No, ma'am. The site plan approval aspect is for the property itself, because further in the ordinance, there's provisions as far as when, say hypothetically, I'm a property owner and I want to develop a pad for food truck operations. The language further in here has development standards that as a property owner, I have to set these essentially pads that are impervious pads, at least 20 by 30 feet, for food truck operations. So the site plan approvals on the property owner's requirement, because that way we make sure that the site is safe for food truck operations, and then that way theoretically, whether it's our Parks and Recreation Department or a private operator developing a COM 2, COM 3, or IND 1 site for food truck operation, they go through the same process for site plan approval. This gives our technical review staff the ability to make sure that all the safety mechanisms put in this draft ordinance are able to be followed and adhered to before it gets a development order. And that way we can ensure safety of the site. But then that way the individual property owner, so back to the scenario where I'm the property owner, I have a site that I have site plan approval. I can have up to 12 food trucks on my property. I could then lease out those spaces on, say, a month-to-month basis for various food truck operators to operate on. The site plan approval is not on the individual food truck operator for just a Tuesday, so it just sets it up so that way the site has an area on it that would actually work with our rest of the draft ordinance as far as the regulations set up in there to ensure the safe applications and operations of a food truck.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Hance, I've got a question if you can go back to the site plan. So with regards to the approval of these site plans, for example, Ralph Carter Park, right? Sometimes the food trucks that are there are, taking up 4 or 5 spaces, and I've got cars parked all along Rimfire, in an unsafe way. And then sometimes I see them behind the field where, it allows for better parking utilization. what's the standard? How do we do things now to approve food trucks to operate for different events and venues and things, things of that nature?
I can defer to James here
Okay.
with how we operate now.
So usually for special events, they go through our, if it's like something that we're putting on, they would come to us, like Food Truck Tuesday would come to us, they would go through the vendor process as long as they're vendors with the city, and then we would allow them to the event. It's kind of like a first come, first served basis. Sometimes we have some people that are staple food trucks that want to stay with us. And then anything other, like another special event or anything like that, they go through our CERT team process.
Okay, so sports league, let's say either at Ralph Carter or one of our other parks. How do we regulate where they park?
That's usually just up to the Parks and Recreation staff, and we work that out with the organization or the person who's putting on the event. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily part of the site plan.
No. It's we would just work it out with that person. Yeah.
No, not currently, but to add on with this draft ordinance, any kind of food truck operation outside of a special event would have to go through the site plan approval process, so it would not allow them to be in a drive aisle or parking lot. So the food truck pads actually further into this draft ordinance have to be on an impervious pad by measuring at least 20 by 30 feet, separated by at least a 5-foot buffer from any kind of parking space or drive aisle. So for safety purposes, that way we're getting the food trucks out of a potential area where there could be someone walking around, coming out the back of their vehicle or just in a drive aisle where they could potentially get ran over.
Okay, so what's being proposed here would change how we're currently doing things.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Make it.
And the other question I had with regards to permitting, when I lived in D.C. and worked at the White House, it wouldn't be for food trucks. I wouldn't have eaten, right? But the city of Washington had a great program of kind of managing for high demand areas, right? Where it's a great place to put a food truck. They would have a rotation schedule to ensure it was kind of equitable. Everybody gets a fair share or at the time of government officials trying to get some food and go back to work. Do we have a plan for that?
Yeah, we're working on kind of like a reservation permit system for the parks that were listed prior, so they would go through our civic rec program. And the good thing about the reservation system, as you say, we'll try and like mix it up as much as possible throughout the year. And then this permit system we can send to Barb and her crew, and so like if they are permitted to be out at the park, then they have a listing of who can be there and who can't. So we're working on a kind of reservation policy, reservation system policy for each of the parks that were listed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if that's something we need to include as part of this, ordinance and the changes that we're considering, but just something to throw out there. Just that way we try to make it fair.
Yeah.
For sites that have a lot of population.
I just had a couple of comments on that. Two things, and I think it's probably covered in here, but I want to make sure I understand how it's covered. I would agree with some kind of reservation system. For instance, at Grand Haven, I know it's not public, but the restaurant there was closed for rehabilitation for a significant amount of time. So arrangements were made with the food trucks by a weekly basis, would come in and be there to provide some food service there at that site. And it was done on a basis where there'd be one type of food truck one week, a different one a different week. So it was just one at a time. So I think that kind of thing can work. The other question is along those same lines. In the rest of the city, for instance, a restaurant is going through major rehabilitation or reconstruction, and it's in a site that's kind of on its own, but is there any provisions within to let a food truck be there while the restaurant's being redone or reconstructed or a new facility being put in? Is there anything in there? I suspect there is.
That's a great question, sir. And in our actual ordinance, there's some throwbacks to state statute. So state statute FS 509.102 has provisions for temporary commercial kitchens with exceptions for businesses that have a license to operate for food basically a restaurant. And if it's going through any kind of renovations or work, it allows provisions for them to have a temporary commercial kitchen on their site to be able to continue their operations.
But we don't specifically talk about that, nor?
We have a callback to that, saying that we will be compliant with state statute.
So, Mr. Sullivan, what Mr. Hanson is saying, so we are preempted by that statute. So anything that statute says we have to do, we're required to follow.
Okay, I feel like our statute is also being informative to our community. They may not know the state laws.
If it's easier for council, that's something that we can add into the ordinance if
Just
directed.
reflect it a little bit more and just say state statute, just say the state statute permits temporary
We can do that.
during construction periods. Okay.
All right. Carrying on, as I mentioned, currently it has a breakdown between principal or ancillary use. Ancillary can be used interchangeably with the term accessory for the purpose of this presentation. With the principal use, the intent is that there will be a site that will have multiple food trucks on it so that mobile food vendors can work with the property owner that develops their site for principal use to use those facilities. These facilities, it's our intent that they'll include accessible restrooms, dining areas, common refuse collection on the site, parking as well. There's put in provision that they have to meet our outdoor lighting requirements of our land development code, especially if someone's going to have outdoor dining for a food truck park on there, and then that they can also develop as a accessory use small recreation area, so like a fenced-in play area, so to speak, like a splash pad, playground, that kind of thing. Any kind of common parking areas separate from vending areas, dining areas, any kind of outdoor recreation. So that goes back to the idea of separating where vehicles are driving around from where the actual food truck operations are at. So the intent is for them to have their parking requirement. People park, get out of their vehicles, go to the food truck corral, so to speak, where the actual food trucks would be, and probably have some kind of central pad area where there'd be the common outdoor dining area, or it could technically be indoor dining. They could build an indoor area for dining if they so chose based on this. As far as the accessory use, it goes back to that callback that I said earlier, is that it's developed on a property that has an existing conforming principal use, and it was limited to public, semi-public, and parks and greenway as sites for the ancillary use. So based on some of the earlier conversation, if it's consensus for council, we can definitely open that up to the other zoning districts as well. The difference is that as an auxiliary use, it doesn't require additional parking. It doesn't require dining areas or outdoor restroom areas outside of what's already required for the principal. The draft ordinance has some basic hours of operation that essentially boil down to that food trucks will not operate out between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And then on a principal use, they're not subject to nightly removal from the parcel. So currently the way the draft ordinance is that these food truck pads would be owned privately in a COM2, COM3 site and under some kind of lease agreement with the property owner. So the food truck operators wouldn't necessarily be required to be removed from the site by our ordinance. If the individual property owner had a different requirement, that'd be up to them. But as an ancillary use, we have language in here for nightly removal, so it ties back into how we'd operate for our parks program. And the big thing is that although it still has the language for 2 to 6 a.m. as a bare minimum, it sets earlier in that first sentence for ancillary use that food trucks will basically not operate outside of the hours of operation of the principal use. So when you're looking at James Holland Park, for example, that closes at 10 p.m., that's going to be the cutoff. And I'm sure when Parks has some kind of policy for how to actually implement it, they'd probably cut off cells maybe an hour before that or so to allow the food truck operator time to pack up and vacate the premise and leave it in the state that they found it, if not better. Going back to what Councilmember Sullivan was talking about, there's some provisions and callbacks to the state statute for nightly removals not necessary if that food truck or temporary commercial kitchens operated on that same premise of like essentially a restaurant that is working in confines of the state statute due to the renovations. This section of the draft ordinance has a little bit more meat and potatoes to it. Essentially, these sites will not impact any kind of required easements, wetlands, buffer requirements that we have, threatened or endangered protected species, drive aisles, sidewalks, emergency access, fire lanes, loading zones, rights of way, impede traffic, ingress, egress, and the intent is that they'll be located on impervious surface and buffered by at least that 5-foot separation that I talked about earlier from any kind of parking or drive area in there. With the intent there is to provide a safe area for customers to queue outside of area where traffic would be going through. Any kind of ancillary recreation areas also have to be buffered by at least 5 foot from a parking area, and then also would have to be fenced in. So essentially, if a site developing for food truck operations was to have one of those playground areas or splash pads that I mentioned earlier, they'd have to fence that playground area in, and then it still has to be set back at least 5 feet from any kind of parking or drive aisle area. And the whole intent there is all for safety purposes, especially for the children that we have going to these with their families. This section here breaks down minimum dimensional requirements for principal and accessory or accessory ancillary use. As a principal use, we have language that requires the outdoor dining or outdoor indoor dining area, seating, minimum seating, minimum parking, and also bathroom requirements. Now, I put this provision in here that because any kind of food truck site that's developed as a principal use is not considered temporary in nature, and therefore it's not included in the exemption provided by Florida Administrative Code that I reference here. So that's our intent, to ensure that these food truck sites that develop as a principal use have restrooms available. This particular table here details the requirements for a site to be developed as principal use. Minimum lot size, 20,000 square feet. That comes from our COM2, COM3. Minimum lot size, COM2 is minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet. So we mirrored that here with this provision. The minimum space for a mobile food dispensing vehicle, that's that 600-foot pad that I talked about, where it has to be at least 30 by 20 feet. For a principal site, we're looking at a maximum number of 15 food truck spaces on a site. Setbacks would inherit the setbacks of their zoning district or MPD development agreement. The minimum separation between food trucks we're looking at is 10 feet. And that basically is for fire protection purposes through Florida Fire Prevention Code. Currently, what we have within that section of code, it's a 10-foot minimum separation between buildings. So we were mirroring that on within food trucks, since these food trucks are operating with open flame inside, just as an abundance of overcaution. In the event that a food truck does come under flame, we wanted to have some kind of separation to minimize the chance of it becoming a situation that grows out of control faster than we can react to it. Minimum parking for principal development site, we're looking at 2 parking spaces per food truck, and then at least 1 space per 75 foot of dining areas. This kind of parking requirements, the intent for the actual employees of the food truck, and then the guests that they'd be having to come as far as customers. Since this food truck site would have multiple food trucks, it has minimums and maximums for seating area for that common area. And then also The restroom requirements would refer back to Florida Building Code occupancy groups. So if I'm not mistaken, you're looking at, I believe, 1 for 75 or so, but I would defer to our chief building official. So during that technical site plan, our building code will review those individual applications for potential development to ensure that they're compliant with that Florida Building Code.
I have a question. It may sound kind of silly, but how many seats are there, I guess technically or legally, in a picnic table, standard picnic table? 6 or 8?
I mean, I don't know if we have a specific measurement for any kind of legal requirements on a picnic table, but any kind of picnic table that I've either built or purchased in my life, you probably fit 6 to 8 people on a picnic table.
Okay, I asked because I think it's relevant. I mean, if we're talking about requiring 10 seats per MFDV, it would seem to me that, we just need to make sure we're not getting into disputes about whether or not a food truck requires, or multiple food trucks require 4 picnic tables or 6 picnic tables, things like that. So just a curiosity if there's any set standard. I would think 6 to 8 as well, but
I would have to defer back to our building official on that when we and it would be great actually, since this is only a workshop. I'll have the discussion because there might be a provision in Florida Building Code that has some kind of minimum seat width as far as kind of like a row or pew or something like that. So maybe that would be applicable in this situation.
Yeah, just making sure, obviously, we're being as transparent and clear about the requirements moving forward. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. This table is table 4.8. It mirrors similar to the requirements of the principal table under 4.7. However, this table is for the ancillary use only. So although it still has the minimum 600 square foot pad sites, the maximum number of mobile food dispensing vehicle spaces is 3. This is for the sites that are to develop as an ancillary site. There's a provision that I'll talk about on the next page that allows for modifications to that number, but otherwise it still has the same setback requirements based on the underlying zoning and the minimum fire separation. So this page here is about the administrative deviations that we set into play. And we set up that all the deviations here are subject to land use administrator approval based on the code provisions and land development code section 2.13 for administrative deviations that we already have in our land development code. But we're looking at language in here that say, for example, since food trucks can vary in size, someone might decide that, well, the 600 square foot pad might not be adequate to them, so they might want to have increase the width requirement or increase the length. We put a mechanism in here that any kind of request to reduce the width requirement would then have basically a 2-for-1 exchange. So if you wanted to reduce that 20-foot width to 19 feet, you'd have to then add 2 feet onto the length. And the whole intent for that is to have somewhere that is safe for customers to queue, away from any kind of drive aisle aspects. There's language in here that deviations to increase the maximum number of spaces for a food truck to operate on a site would require an additional 10,000 square foot for the minimum lot size, not to exceed an additional 5 spaces. So that calls back to the minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. So for a site to develop at, say, Holland Park for a food truck site, the way the code reads right now, it needs to be at least 20,000 square feet. It limits them to no more than 3 food trucks or spaces on that site. But with this provision here, you can have a deviation standard where you can get an additional food truck space for every 10,000 additional square feet for that site that you have. So that way this could actually change Holland Park, and it'd be up to Parks and Rec if they wanted to have that provision or have that many food trucks, but up to 8 food trucks for the overall site. So basically, the more land you have, the more flexible we are with the number of food trucks that you could have. This does carry back onto the properties that are developed for principal use that are limited at 15. At 20,000. So if they had an additional 50,000 square feet, they could have up to 20 food truck spaces, which is kind of a comparable number to some other larger food truck parks, such as Food Truck Heaven and over in Kissimmee or some of the other food truck parks up like the Village food truck parks up in St. Augustine. Outdoor dining and signage. So the whole idea is that any kind of site, providing any kind of seating area, tent canopy, if it's for an ancillary use, that's fine, and it can be on their food truck space as long as the property owner is okay with it. So if it's a site that James is operating here over at the stage, for example, and the food truck operator wanted to have a picnic table out on their site, with, they'd be able to do that, but it's on the assumption that it's okayed by the property owner and that they're packing that up with their nightly removal. Each food truck operator will have to provide their own waste receptacle during hours of operation. Any signage that they wanted to provide outside of their food truck would be temporary and an A-frame sign only. That way it's easy to fold up and put inside and when they're driving off. And then also any of that temporary seating, canopy, waste receptacle signage is in the approved space and set back, once again, at least at 5 feet from any kind of vehicular drive area or parking space. Fire safety. We put this in here to help out Chief Berryhill and his team to make sure that all our fire hydrants are kept free and clear. Same with any kind of department inlet connections, FDCs, fire protection control valves. And that way they'd need to have a clear and unobstructed path at least 8 foot in width. And then also all food trucks would then also have to have a fully charged fire extinguisher located on their premises at all times during operation. Noise and lighting. Currently with this draft ordinance, amplified music coming from a food truck is prohibited. And then all outdoor lighting would have to meet our applicable land development code. Illicit discharge, we put this in here at the behest of our Parks Department. And with some of the language that we have, the intent here with the whole reason for that impervious pad is to help minimize and eliminate any kind of discharge of fat, oil, grease, wastewater into our sanitary sewer system, spills of oil, fuel, coolant, or any kind of other hazardous liquids from the ground area, so that way they can be immediately cleaned up. And then any kind of illicit discharge needs to get reported to us. That way we can make sure that we can notify our Public Works team and utilities to get everything cleaned up. Now, this section of the code here relates back to Ms. Grossman's team for code enforcement. The intent here is that any kind of food trucks authorized by the section have to meet the definition for what state statute has for what a food truck is or temporary commercial kitchen is. So that essentially is a truck that drives around and serves food. It doesn't include provisions for someone doing mobile knife sharpening, or I've seen when I was driving down Daytona Beach, I saw someone, an attorney with a food truck offering legal services. So any kind of non-food related services wouldn't be allowed under this ordinance. And then any kind of food truck operating within the city without complying within the provisions of this section, or otherwise exempted by those two exemptions that we have at the beginning, would be subject to our code enforcement action based on what we have in this code of ordinances.
Just a quick question on that.
Yes, sir.
Political signs?
Political signs? Oh, political signs you're talking about.
Right.
We don't have any language in here as far as the scope of this food truck ordinance that would tie into political signs. However, the only signage language that I have outside of what's already on a food truck, they'd be limited to A-frame signs only. But that's something that we can talk to the ad hoc about if we need any provisions for if a site wants to have political signage
One
on a
second.
food truck.
Ms. Grossman, do you want to address the political sign question? Yeah, so it's a freedom of speech. We can't regulate the sign, so we look at every sign as the same.
Yeah, I just so we know that ahead of time in case it comes up later on.
But, I mean, we could put a number of, the maximum number of A-frame signs a food truck could have or something like that. But I think most operators are going to want to, maximize their income for customers, so they're probably going to be having their menu advertised. This is the section that relates to James and his team primarily. It's the utilization of mobile food dispensing vehicles on city-owned, city-leased land. It basically sets up open-ended so that way, if the ordinance is adopted with language in here, that way parks or the city can come up with a standard operating policy about how to actually regulate a reservation program for food trucks to operate on their sites. So as Mr. Hertz was talking about, having a reservation program through their Civil Plus program, I believe it was, or having some kind of decal material as far as identifying who's supposed to be out there at a given time. It basically is just a framework to allow them to build that more analytical policy for how they actually want to operate, and then alternatively adopt probably via resolution some kind of fee schedule for that reservation. We're getting to the end, so I would just want to thank you for your patience. This is just kind of glossary. And basically it calls back, we're trying to match our definitions with state statute, because the whole intent is to be as compliant with state statute as possible. And this is the penultimate slide here. Just shows a couple different examples of some of the various food truck parks. The one on the upper left is in Orlando. I believe that's Food Truck Haven out in, Kissimmee area, actually. In the upper right, I believe that's out in the Tampa Bay area. And the bottom left and bottom right, I believe, are in St. Augustine. We're available for any questions that you may have.
Okay, I'll start, Mr. Hanson. Wow. So out at the promenade, over here.
Yes, sir.
I know they've talked about inside their quad there, allowing food trucks and stuff in there. But I noticed I was passing by a few days ago, and there was in the military, we call it a gut truck or a roach coach. They had one of those parked outside for the guys to get. Who regulates that type of truck?
Well, sir, depending on the nature of how that roach coach or gut truck is operating, I would like to think that it is maybe being contracted by the construction company, that the contractor, to attract them to their area as a privately catered facility. And if they're only operating and serving the people working on that construction site, it could potentially qualify as that second exemption that I have in the draft ordinance. So now, if they're open and selling their items to anybody walking by, the high school kids going on the way to FBZ, or people living in the multifamily apartments nearby, that's another story.
Okay. I just didn't know what regulations govern their operation within the city. Is there any?
As is right now, I believe it would just be through the city's code of ordinances for mobile vendors.
Okay. I was just asking about that. All right. Let me give you a scenario and tell me if, and I invited these guys, the food truck vendors. I put out a video on Sunday and encouraged these guys to come to give us their feedback on what they envision this ordinance and what would facilitate them being able to operate their business and support their families, because a lot of these guys depend on this. A lot of them is their primary source of income. So let me give you a scenario. So Mike Norris, he owns Home Depot on the other side of town. And I have all this parking area in the back. So if I wanted to invite, say, Chris to come in with his truck on Tuesdays and Thursdays and set up in my parking lot, under this ordinance, would that be allowed?
Currently, no. Based on the earlier conversation that Vice Mayor Pontieri mentioned about allowing for COM2, COM3 to be an accessory use only, if that's the council direction, we can go ahead and amend that, but it would set it up so that way if you own Home Depot, you'd have to come in for a site plan modification to identify a pad area that wouldn't take away from your required parking area that you would then allow for the food truck operators to have and be able to utilize.
So what I'm getting at is, I have all this additional parking, and even though if you've been to the Home Depot, and I know you do because I ran into you at Lowe's, where they have their sheds and stuff out front.
Mhm.
So if they say, okay, I want Chris to be able to set up his food truck there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and in our regulation it says something about the lanes of travel and parking and egress and ingress. I would like that to be able, for someone to be able to do that. I think we're kind of making it too cumbersome.
Yeah.
Too cumbersome for these guys to operate. And I agree with the vice mayor about, as an ancillary item for a primary structure, say like Home Depot. And so I'm in full agreement with what the vice mayor said. So I just don't want it to be too cumbersome to keep these guys from operating. Say if the city, say Chris approached the city, said, hey, Mayor, I'd like to park in this strip of parking out here down at the end from the promenade. People just stop by and grab their sandwiches and go. Would that be allowed?
Currently, the way the draft ordinance is, if it's in a parking area or adjacent to a drive aisle, no, because the language is that it has to be on an impervious pad separated by at least 5 foot from a parking area or drive aisle. So, and then the intent there was for safety purposes, and some of the language here, I tried to reach out to some of the food truck operators. Early on in the process, I was given contact information with a food truck operator that owns and operates the original Philly cheesesteaks operated. So I've been in contact with her and one of her neighbors. I tried to reach out to get in contact with others. However, I didn't have their contact information. So I tried to have her disseminate this draft ordinance to the food truck community. So I don't know what kind of saturation it necessarily got to try and get some of that feedback, because I wanted to gauge some of that stakeholder. But tallying back to your question as far as being able to have a row of parking, theoretically, if someone went through a site plan modification, as long as if the ordinance was adopted and we determined that COM2 would allow for food truck operator as an accessory use and had that A, then the use is under the way, then it would have to go through for site plan modification. It's a minor application, but goes through. We make sure that way they have their still minimum parking requirements are being met, but whatever area that they wanted to cordon off in their parking lot for potential food truck operation, and then that area would then have to be improved, so it'd have to have that like 5 foot separation of buffer between a drive aisle parking area to be able to have their food truck spaces. So there's mechanisms in the existing language that it could be done fairly easily, because the way the language is, those food truck pads would have to be impervious. So if you're in a parking lot area that's already impervious, we're just looking at making sure that we have the minimum safety buffers to make sure that people aren't driving through where customers are queuing or stacking. So if the only hiccup realistically that I see with the way the draft ordinance is I was originally told to just keep the COM2, COM3 to principal use only. But if it's a consensus of the council and you want to add the accessory use, we can do that. And then Home Depot or Lowe's or whoever the case might be, they'd come in with that site plan modification application, and then our technical review staff would review it to make sure that they're meeting code, and then where they're looking at operating their food trucks sites on there meet the provisions as far as that 5 foot safety requirement from any kind of drive aisle, and it's not impacting any kind of other safety issues that we have.
Okay, and what would the costs be associated with that? Because it's going to be the food truck vendor that's probably going to absorb that cost if they go to someone like that, like Home Depot or Lowe's, and say, could I do this on your property? And they're going to absorb that cost. So how much would it cost for them to do that site plan review?
I'd have to double check the actual application fee for site plan modification. Now, that cost itself that the city has for a fee is rather insignificant, where when you're putting in a site plan application process or modification, depending on the nature of that existing site, how recent their survey is for the property, because you're looking at needing a boundary survey with showing all the improvements on the property to ensure that this location that they want to have their food truck operations isn't impacting any kind of recorded easements on the site. So that's also going to require title opinion material documentation as well. So it's kind of all par for the course, but
It's
ballpark, you're
it's-
looking at probably a few $1,000s or so.
Yeah, see, that's
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can add, Mr. Hanson, but for like, say, the mayor's specific example, Lowe's or Home Depot, that would be a one-time site application, right?
That's correct.
Once it's done, they would not need to do that ever again.
For Home Depot,
Yeah.
Yep.
not for the food truck vendor.
Yeah, so the application is on the property owner to make. So if I owned, Michael's Pizza food truck or whatever, I wouldn't be necessarily making the application for a particular site because I'm not the property owner. Now, we have mechanisms that the property owner could do an authorization of owner form to authorize that person to operate on their behalf for the application materials. And it's very well possible that a business owner more likely may pass that cost onto a food truck operator. But then again, the intent is for, if I'm the business owner or the property owner now, trying to lease these spaces out to potential food truck spaces, they probably would likely want to design their site realistically to allow for probably more than one food truck space. That way they could maximize whatever kind of income revenue that they could get for the operations of leasing out those spaces. So whether or not they'd put that fee all on one particular food truck operator, that I'm not sure. That'd be up to private parties. But that when I said that estimate amount, I'm looking at cost of survey and title opinion. So depending on the nature of the site might already have still a valid survey or might still have a valid title opinion. Or when a site is coming in for initial application, a food truck site could theoretically be built into place right from the get-go. And that way, that cost wouldn't additionally be there.
Mr. Hanson, if they already had the survey that was up to date and they just need a simple site application, what would be the ballpark for just a site application by itself?
I'd have to verify the actual fee schedule for the technical site plan modification.
And how long would that application be good for? 10 years,
So
20 years? I mean, Home Depot's been around forever.
once you get a development order and on site plan modification, then that site is good to go. That it basically runs with the property with that development order. So if it's set up with someone who was apply for Home Depot, for example,
Yeah.
say they wanted to have 3 food truck spaces in the parking lot area, and they took away those parking areas, put, maybe raise Miami curb, put in some landscape buffers or something like that for separation, and they said, this is going to be our site where we're going to have our food trucks. They do that application. Once they get the development order, then they go in, they apply for a site development permit, any kind of infrastructure to put in, and a building permit, they build up, and obviously with a food truck pad, you're not looking at too much vertical costs for building permits and such, so it's honestly probably cheaper than, going vertical with another building. But overall, it's the one and done. So once you get it built in, it basically is there with the land until such time that someone wants to come in with another site plan modification and remove it.
Is this considered a technical site plan? I'm
So-
asking because I'm on our website for our application fees, and you're looking at like $500 is what it appears to be.
Yeah, this would be a modification. Well, if it's a site that's already developed, it'd be a modification. Otherwise, if it's a brand new site, then it would be a technical site plan application.
I think we're missing the forest for the trees. It's a bit cumbersome. I do believe. I think to me, especially in those big parking lots, it shouldn't be that have to go through all that just for Chris to park his truck there for 2 days a week to sell coffee or whatever he's selling, and it's not interfering with the flow of traffic or any safety concerns. It seems like it's way too much for that. And The second thing I like to mention is the parks as areas for that. There, in any of those, I don't think the parking is adequate for setting up food trucks. Say down in Seminole Woods, we know for a fact Ralph Carter Park, you know, it's not very conducive for that type of operation. And how much would it cost be for someone to operate a food truck on city property in one of those parking lots?
So probably our special event fee is about, I think it's close to, obviously they get the business tax fee, and then we add another fee of about, I think it's close to about $100 or something, just to, depending on the food truck and the event, yeah.
So we'll find ourselves killing people with small margins to begin with. You got to look at it from a small business owner's perspective. Those margins add up over time. So if I have to pay Ken from Home Depot $1,000 just to get it where I can use his, it's going to take me a long time to make up that difference.
So my thought, well, first of all, Michael, thank you for the work that you've done on this. I can tell you put in a lot of work and forethought, and so I appreciate your time and your effort. Whatever we decide, I think we need to be even keel across the board. So if we say we're going to allow food trucks in parking areas for private companies, it needs to apply also to parks. That being said, I don't think that the food truck should be permitted in parking unless after they have taken up that space and whatever that parking area is, the amount of parking spaces remaining still meet the code requirement. So in other words, if we have to have it, I'm just throwing out random numbers. If we have to have 10 parking spaces per 1,000 commercial square feet, if Home Depot, and again, throwing out random numbers, if Home Depot is 50,000 square feet and we have enough parking spaces with overflow, extra parking, then yes, a food truck should be permitted to go into that parking space or parking area and operate as long as the remaining parking spaces will still meet our code. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. I feel the same way about parks. The fact of the matter is you have a lot of parents who are out at, for instance, school board member Lauren Ramirez, she's got 4 boys. They're literally at games all day long. They need somewhere to eat or to grab a snow cone or whatever. So I think as long as we are the event or the commercial entity is still meeting our minimum parking requirements, if they want to allow or if there wants to be a food truck in the parking area and it's safe and it's meeting all of our other parameters, then it should be permitted, and we should not make a difference between public and private. Regarding the fees, I hear you, Mayor, but we have to be consistent. We have consistently across the board said we need to be cost recovery on permit fees, applications, et cetera, for commercial development, residential development, for code enforcement, everything. We, as a council, made a policy. We're going to be cost recovery. I don't think this is any different. So if we need to evaluate what that cost looks like, then maybe that's something we need to do before first read. Let's look into what the actual cost of evaluating these site plans. And maybe we come up with a different category, food truck site plan. Why not? So if that happens to be a little bit less than what our master site plans or our technical site plans look like, then great, so be it. Then we can reduce that fee. But we need to be cost recovery. We need to be consistent. My last comment is the requirements for the application. I kind of look at this similar to like an ARB request. You have a survey of your property, but you want to put a fence on it. So you submit to your ARB where the fence would be from whoever is going to put the fence up. I kind of look at this the same way. So to your point, Marcus and Councilman Gambaro, if Home Depot already has a survey, that's a good survey, nothing has changed. And they work with the food truck operator to come in and put wherever their pad is going to be, I think that should be sufficient. And then if staff says, hey, this is not sufficient for whatever reason, and you all have that discretion that is within your purview, then you kick it back and you may require something else. But to me, this almost warrants a slight change to a review process than what we would treat something else. And I think that that could come with a lower cost.
Thank you, Dan. Councilman Gambaro, you had something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I agree with everything you said, Vice Mayor. And just looking at, let's say, whatever that fee is, again, using the Home Depot example, Mr. Hanson, you said it was a one-time deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
That's correct.
It's done, and if Chris or others wanted to, if there was, let's say, Home Depot wanted to have 20 different trucks there during the week over, whatever the period of time is, I think that Home Depot could share that one-time cost, especially if it's only going to happen once. And then the other piece is, do we need to have that fee? If it's a more streamlined process, does that fee need to be what we normally charge? To your point, and so I think there's things where we can make this work for those that actually would have to set up an area on their property to allow for food trucks, and also for the business owners. So it makes sense. I really agree with the parking. 9 o'clock this weekend. There was sports league out at Ralph Carter Park, and it was just, again, cars all up and down Rimfire. Not specifically because of food trucks, but I have seen that where food trucks take up space where our residents could be parking, and that's even using Rimfire Elementary to park there. It was packed, right? It was a great sporting event. So
We need more fields, Councilman Gambaro.
let's do it, and then we can move the lights. So okay, but thank you very much for your work on this. Really appreciate it. I look forward to hear from our residents on this issue.
Yes, Councilman Sullivan.
Just, yes, thanks for because this is important. It is important for our business people. But just one last thought. I hate to always bring up the old county thing, but it would be nice, as far as I'm concerned, if there was some coordination between the county rules and the city rules, just so the operators don't have to go through different processes and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there's been anything done along those lines. I don't know what the rules are specifically in the county for this, and how they would operate with our rules, or would they be consistent? But it might be something to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good idea. And I would say, I want to make very clear, I do think, and I hope I can get council support on this, I do think we should allow accessory on COM 1, COM 2, and Industrial 1.
Everybody's in agreement on that one? That's
Okay,
amazing.
thank you.
Nothing else, Vice Mayor? Yeah, for a lot of the business owners and restaurants, most food trucks are like niche, because foodies are out there, and more food trucks are going to come online because it's a big industry now. But a lot of them are niche, so I don't think the competition with, brick and mortar, it's not the same, and it's on a smaller scale. So I'm not concerned with that too much. I think I found the perfect spot for a food truck corral, and that was up at Town Center behind Olive Garden. They got that little that drive in the back. I actually contacted the company, and they said that property is dedicated to something else. But I was thinking if someone could buy that piece of property, it would be nice to have that as a food option, lunch option for people. But it's been taken up. So there's no more comments from the council. Let's open it up to the people that this affects, mostly the food truck vendors. So if you have public comment concerning this agenda item, please come forward. Yes, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Steve Sherman. My son Joseph actually owns a mobile food truck here in town. He started at the age of 14. He graduated from Matanzas in May, just after opening his second food truck. He supports ROTC through the area and through the entire state of Florida. Why does he do this? Because when he first came in and applied, what he was told was, we have to issue a license, we don't have to let you make money. That was word for word what my son was told about opening a business. So he wrote a business plan for himself and said, I'm going to do it out of town. He's been participating here minimally. We do appreciate when he does, but the majority of his is not from here. He's signed a contract over in Volusia County. He has a beach spot for a year. Every year he'll be doing it. He employs 6 kids from this town that are students. There's jobs here, not just families trying to support themselves. I've been in the restaurant industry since I was 14. I'm 56. I've opened up restaurants from scratch. I've managed some of the biggest businesses in the areas. I've done Five Guys in New York, New Jersey. I've opened up restaurants in Miami. I've opened up food trucks. I sat through this presentation. I appreciate it. But the lack of knowledge of the industry and what's required is astounding. I think it needs to go back. We were never contacted. So who was contacted to do this? It wasn't us. But I'd be willing to offer my help and my son's help. Because quite honestly, at his age, his expertise is phenomenal. He graduated top of his class. He's in the top 3% in the nation. He's going to culinary school at Daytona State right now, and he's got a full scholarship to Johnson & Wales. He only does black and white. This is the rule. This is the law. This is the way we do it. You can't change this kid. So having somebody like that looking at these who has spent the time to investigate how to do this, there's questions that you guys are asking. The county doesn't do anything. The county takes a tax certificate and that's it. The city doesn't really do anything. They take money. DBPR, Department of Agriculture, control how we operate. You guys decide if we can make money. And the last comment, as a business, to be pushing out for political signs isn't fair. We're here to make money and support our kids, and picking a side can destroy somebody. So political sides on a food truck, when they're concerned about their own signage first, should be the last. Let's try to figure out how people can make money and how we can do this for the city. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
First, I want to tell you that I very much appreciate
State your name.
meeting.
State your
Hear
name
me?
for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sheila Hines. I live at 110 Renshaw Drive, 31-year resident of Palm Coast. I've been in business with Sweet Sheila's Funnel Cakes for 16 years. I was at Ralph Carter Park, went by on Saturday, and it's nice to have the road open because then our food trucks can park and not take up the other parking. So I just want to tell you, I appreciate you having this meeting. I appreciate you listening to us and trying to make these regulations. The overreach is astounding, and I don't know where to start. I want to let you know that at $2,000, it would take me, my funnel cakes are $8. I would have to sell 250 to pay for a site plan that already exists. You're overreaching. These are private properties. If Home Depot, I set up at Walmart last year. I was contacted. They allowed me to pull right up in front of the store. And until the manager changed, I was welcome there once a week. There was no permitting. There were no inspections. We are regulated by the state. We just all upped our permit on September 17th. We're good for another year. We all have insurance. We all regulate ourselves. We don't all use propane. I use electric. We all use different forms. But the fact that you want to... Okay, I'm trying to slow down because there was so much information. I want to switch gears to the industrial park. I have had an opportunity and spoken with a business owner in the industrial park, and he welcomed me into his parking lot. Come on out here, see what you can do. I bet there's 1,000 people that work out in the industrial park. Years ago, Sullivan's had a restaurant. There was a restaurant there years and years ago. So the industrial park is an open area. I believe that these parking lots are open, and we know they're empty. Corey's, I don't know how many people they employ, but there's probably 1,000 people that would appreciate the contribution that food trucks make. And I want to also say that we are a small business. We're represented. Who's a food truck? Raise your hand, please. Okay, this is a small part of your community. We are small business. I would say in this city, we have 50 food trucks. Not all of our food trucks work here in the city. A lot of them go to Jacksonville, they go to Daytona, because we have a smaller area and they can make more money in a larger area. So the fact that you want us to do a $2,000 site plan, first of all, I was in permitting for years. How long are you going to take to get a site plan? I understand now to have a special event at a private property, it takes 3 months to get a permit. We work on the fly. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you listening to all of us.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Chris, you gonna give me some of your feedback, brother? I'd like to hear from you. Come up to the podium.
Sir, if you want to have that, you can put it up there on the mic so it's on the record. So then council can address that during their comments. So if you come up to the mic and ask that question, then they can address it.
All right. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Guarino. I'm the owner of Crazy Good Eats here. I have raised 4 children in Palm Coast. I've been here 22 years now. I own a food truck. It is a small business. I own a home here. We pay taxes. We pay business taxes. I want to touch on one major thing. We have the opportunity to make money guaranteed by the city once a month, Food Truck Tuesday. That is favored by trucks that don't live here, that don't pay school taxes, they don't pay property taxes, they don't own homes here, they don't give back to their community here. And that part of it is not okay. We should not. I travel from Orlando to Jacksonville to make money in our food truck. That shouldn't be. We do school events here when we're asked to come. We give back to the local elementary schools, the high schools. We do high school events. That also is giving back to our community. We should be prioritized. Trucks that live here, pay taxes here, pay fees here, pay permits here, and aren't allowed to make money blows my mind. I go to a Lowe's in St. Augustine. They section off with caution tape a strip of land there, parking spots, probably I would say about 15 or 20. They just caution tape around it, and everything works flawlessly there. People come from all over, businesses near and far. 15, 20 minutes away, they travel to that Lowe's to come get lunch. Why that can't be the same thing here for us? If you have a business that also pays business taxes here like all of us do, that is willing and wants us on property, we should be allowed to be there with their consent. Again, we're regulated through the state. We pay taxes here, business tax, but again, you guys do control what we can do. And to be honest, this community is built off of people like us who work small business to give back to our community. We should be able to service the people that live here instead of having to travel to Jacksonville and Orlando for citizens there to make a living and service them. That should be we should be able to service and survive in our own community without having to travel to make a profit. I think it's terrible, and I will say this with Tractor Supply, I think it's ridiculous. I think they should be 100% allowed to be there. If it's okay with the business owner, then it should be okay with the city. And the fees, $2,000, that's not reality. There's no way. So if we go to Home Depot and Lowe's, that's $2,000 for Home Depot, it's $2,000 for Lowe's, it's going to be $2,000 for Tractor Supply. And to wait months, it's just not a reasonable thing. We shouldn't have to travel outside of the city when we pay our business tax. We own homes here, we have families here, we should not have to travel. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Henry.
Just too many notes. Denise Henry, P section. I don't own a food truck. I don't plan to, although my son would like to have a coffee truck. I understand the ordinance for a food truck park. I saw a food truck park in Tennessee. I think that's really a great idea because once a month, Food Truck Tuesday is, I think people want to have more than that. And a food truck park in Tennessee that I saw a year ago, it's operated like a campground. So the sites are there with electricity. You just pull in your truck, you pull out. You don't have to be there permanently. They have parking spaces, they have picnic tables, the park itself. So I understand an ordinance for that. But food trucks are fast food, something people buy and eat on the run. So unless it's at an event where chairs would be welcome, I don't see any reason to require people to have tables. If businesses, private businesses, want to have a food truck in their parking lot, that should be their decision. I don't see where we should do all this overreach and require site plan changes and things like that just to have a food truck. Now, if I was a food truck person, I wouldn't really want to be in a parking lot with a couple other food trucks to say that you're requiring certain things. As far as our parks, if Park and Recreation established the areas in the parks, I mean, how do you have a private person establish a food truck park in our park? I mean, I think that has to be Park and Recreation's. Let me see what else. And like industrial, I agree. Like I worked for a concrete manufacturer for years, and on lunchtime, you would occasionally, if a food truck wanted, to pull in to offer lunch for your employees so they didn't have to go out. Because if you have to drive out for lunch somewhere, you hardly have time to drive back, especially if you only have a half an hour. And it's a much better, healthy option than vending machines. So I see no reason if a business wants to invite a food truck or if a food truck offers to have lunch for their employees. And then, let me see what, and if we were looking for a good place for a food truck, I think about parking. I mean, there is so much parking there, empty parking for years. I've been here 12 years now, and you could put a couple food trucks there, and there'd be no problem. So I wouldn't even know why they would even need to have a site plan change just to have a few food trucks there, but I might look into that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Dexter. I'm the owner of Dexter Angel's House of Flavor. I'm the new kid on the block. My wife and I moved here about 5 years ago. We owned a brick and mortar in Bunnell, and we decided to get a food truck. So a lot of the comments are repetitive because it's the same. First off, I think I heard the gentleman say something about being concerned about us taking up from the brick and mortars. If Pizza Shop A is doing better than Pizza Shop B, I don't see the city getting involved, telling them they can't sell or they have to stop or limit their hours because they're putting out a better product. It shouldn't be that. They shouldn't have that say-so. There are regulations that govern us to where we can and cannot park or where you can and cannot build a different restaurant, if you understand what I'm saying. Parking areas at the parks. If you guys, this is a small community. If you've been out to the parks for, say, Ralph Carter Park, the food trucks are made to park on a strip. We're not in the public parking area. We don't have anything to do with where the cars park at. We're put on a strip along the side of the field. So they have to walk all the way 50 yards from this side to come to us. So we're not influencing the parking. We're out of the way. On all the slides, and what you guys are proposing is great, but I think we're, like they said, we're preparing for a Little League game, but you guys are preparing for a Major League Baseball game. It's an overreach. And on no slides have I seen a date. This is our livelihood that we do this to provide for our family, and you're telling we can't park in the city. So when is the start date? When is this going to be put in effect that we can operate? We have these food trucks to take care of our families. And then you're proposing the parks, like the young lady just said. You're pushing us out, way out. Nobody's going to have time to come drive. I don't care what kind of product you have. You only get 30 minutes for lunch. You don't have time to drive out to us to a park and then come back. You're going to these other locations that are within the city. Once again, we pay taxes. We pay all the paperwork that's needed to be done to operate a food truck. We have to do it whether the same as a brick and mortar or a food truck. We are required to do the same things. There's no difference. A lot of the businesses that allow and ask us to come, we bring customers to their business. They don't just come to our food truck. They go to that shop, they come to the food truck, place their order, they go shop inside that business, and then come back out and pick up their food. So we add to that business when we park on their property. And it's like Chris said, I understand that Palm Coast is different, but we are invited to Daytona, Ormond, all the outskirt cities, but we're not feeling welcome in a place where we pay taxes. So once again, thank you guys for listening to us, but I hope you guys hear us and act on it, sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dexter. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, sir? Yes, ma'am? Yes, sir? Tag team?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Victor Guasp. I'm the owner of Lion's Mane Haircut Lounge, and this is my wife, Jennifer Boya. She's the owner of Borinquen Cravings Puerto Rican food truck. Am I allowed to address the gentleman?
Address us. We'll follow up. If you have questions, we'll follow up.
Gotcha. I'm seeing a lot of planning for a big place for food trucks for the future, but I'm not necessarily seeing a lot of input or a lot of effort being put into it right now. Like Dex said, what is going on for right now? Do you really think that Home Depot, a big company like that, is going to go out of their way to do a site plan for the little business that's just going to come feed people? Because that's how they're going to look at it. These people are not going to go out of their way and pay $1,000, $2,000, whatever the site plan might cost, and spend their time to just allow us. Because they could just easily say, it's all right. We're not going to put in that effort. We're local. We've only been here for a year and a half, just over a year and a half. And we already own 2 businesses in the city. We pay the taxes. We're here for the people, to serve the people, just to make ends meet. I don't think you guys understand the logistics that it takes to run a food truck, because it's not just, hey, we're going to open the door and cook some food and sell the money, and make the money. It's not how it goes. She has to wake up very, very early to prepare to open up her window and be there until 7 o'clock, from 12 to 7 o'clock, to be able to feed people. And sometimes just make $100, $200, because we don't get promotion. We got to promote ourselves through Facebook, through Instagram.
And then we have people who start complaining because we're not supposed to be operating in Palm Coast, and they're very aggressive as well when we promote ourselves.
Yeah. Aside from that, we've tried the Food Truck Tuesday, which only allows us 3 hours of operation. And to move a food truck, bring it to a place, and get everything ready, that's like 45 minutes to an hour of preparation to be able to open the window and start feeding people and selling food for 3 hours. And then within that 3-hour window, you're supposed to do that. And we haven't even been allowed to go, because we reached out multiple times, got kickback saying that they're full for the rest of the year. So, we just need some sympathy. We need some compassion in terms of small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? We'll bring it back to the dais. For your, I'm sorry, Mr. Tony, what you got?
Tony Amaral, Palm Coast. I want to thank staff and I want to thank this council for actually taking on this debate, because it's been going on for years. It's been a comment that has been come up. I know I personally have said, how do we allow outside vendors to come sit on city property once a month designated to do this, and we don't let our local businesses do it? I think, and again, I am not anywhere near the expertise that these people have. The way the ordinance is, it's a good start, but I do believe, from what I saw, it was leaning more towards a park, like a food park. The way I ever understood it, and I've seen it up north, I've seen it in DC, I've seen it in New Jersey, is these trucks will rotate around. They have a following. They are being, hey, where are you guys going to be today? And they will be followed that way. I don't think they can get a special event permit for every time they want to go to a Lowe's or a Home Depot. But to put first of all, the resource requirement needed to do this food truck park is something we just can't afford to give up. We can't afford to give up a commercial piece of land to be a slab, to be a food truck out in the middle of an industrial area. because it's not going to work. We do, again, it was a great start. I do think that the process needs to be furthered. You've got experts here, get numbers, stakeholders. I mean, these are stakeholders that are in your neighborhood right now, and that's something that we need to focus on. It would be great to have these niche restaurants pop up here, there, all over town, and not be limited. They do it in St. Augustine. I see it at the Home Depot in St. Augustine, the Lowe's in St. Augustine. And again, but St. Augustine also has their own food truck park also. It is something to keep moving forward. I know it's been years, but just like house colors and chickens and everything else, we can persevere. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? No one coming forward. We'll bring it back to the dais. Dexter, the answer to your question up front is, if we move forward with the ordinance, once we get it the way we want it, we'll do the first read, second read, then it goes into effect. Now, how long that takes, it depends on our agenda and our calendar of how things are progressing.
Mr. Mayor, just to add on to that, this also has to go towards planning board. So it would go to planning board, then first read, then second read.
Yeah, so we got a few steps to get there, just like any other ordinance in the city.
I can add to that. Right now, it's projected, first read is projected for November 19th, second read is projected for December 16th. So if it passes December 16th, it would be effective on that date.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Currently, the schedule has it for planning board November 19th.
Okay.
The first read with city council December 16th, and the second read with city council on January 6th.
Okay, so I got different information, but thank you for that.
I have an old calendar.
No, I got an email.
Oh, okay. So it's pushing it out to the right a little bit. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we're ready for prime time on this, and I know you did your outreach, Mr. Hanson, but we got great input here today, and I'd like for as much as you can, because I know you guys are running a business. I know what that's like. Give input.
I'm going to grab them all after this, sir.
All right, to the ad hoc committee, because I'm starting to think, why are we doing this permitting again? I would love to eat some of your Puerto Rican food, at an event, to something I might be sponsoring or whatever the case may be. I just don't think we're ready for prime time. I think we need more input and do a little bit more. Not to say that you always do excellent work, but I think we just need more input so it makes sense. And what we're hearing right now, the way this ordinance is set up, it doesn't make sense.
I fully agree, sir. Going into this, I only had contact information for one food truck operator. I tried to reach out and get others. Okay. However, the contacts that I had, nobody gave it. So following the discussion here, I'll go out in the hallway and I'll go get my business card to everybody that spoke. That way we can reach out and connect with them all.
How about you guys give Mr. Hanson your business card to make sure we can set up the ad hoc meetings, okay? But that's where I'm at.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the issue to me is, and first of all, I know there's been, I'm just going to call it what it is, some smirking. Mr. Hanson works very hard, and he will continue to work very hard with you all. So to impugn the work or integrity of him, please refrain from doing that and just work together. And if you have issues working together, let me know, because I will step in at that point, but I don't think you will. With regards to the intent behind this, I think the intent missed the mark. I think, and that's where you were going with. I think that there was an intent that kind of the catalyst of this may have been a food truck park, rather than allowing what we as council have given direction to allow for accessory uses. So if you look in the ordinance the way it currently is, there were some comments that, this is too big. Well, you're right. I think the way this ordinance is currently crafted is for food truck parks when we want to allow more than that. We want to allow accessory uses so that you don't have to have this whole hoopla on this park and all of these things that are required maybe for a food truck park. So I think we need to change the intent behind the ordinance and maybe look at other ordinances from St. Augustine, from Daytona, Ormond, wherever it may be, so that we can compare now that we know, because you didn't know the direction coming in here today. You didn't know what we would want. So now that you know what we want and what our intent to allow in the city is, I think there can be some changes made. I don't want to see this put off anymore. I want to see this move forward yesterday. So to allow these folks to start operating. Mr. Hanson, is it possible to kind of rework this, knowing what our intent is now, and have it for PLDRB on 11/19?
It's funny that you say that, Vice Mayor, because originally when I got tasked with this halfway through the process, I drafted an ordinance that would allow for accessory use in commercial area, and then I was told to draw it back to just primary. So I can take a look at my initial version and then this version and condense it through after I discuss with the food truck operators here. That way, hopefully we can get to a point that everybody's happy with the intent. And just to clarify, when I heard council, you're looking for accessory use, and stop me if I'm wrong, but did I hear COM 1, COM 2, COM 3, and Industrial 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one more comment. As far as the permit fees, I don't think you're looking at $2,000. I just don't. So let's, again, as you're reworking this, Mr. Hanson, kind of rework, look at that fee again, what that would look like. I have a question, though. When the big red bus parks in Walmart, what do they have to do?
That I'm not sure, ma'am. I'd have to get back to you on.
Okay, because they take up a ton of parking spots. And so my goal in everything that I do from this dais is to be consistent and predictable. If we are not consistently applying our rules and regulations across the board to everybody, we're doing something wrong. So to the extent the big red bus has the ability to call the city, and look, I donate blood. I have nothing against the big red bus, but to the extent they call the city a week ahead of time and say, hey, we're going to be at Walmart taking up 8 spots in the back, why are we treating food trucks differently? So just food for thought as we kind of look at being very consistent across the board. That's all I have, Mayor.
Just, as looking at this, if we don't have a schedule, this thing will just kick down the street month after month after month. So I am not in favor of slowing the process down. I think it can be done in the time frame. It's just where you put your emphasis. And I think we've heard a lot today. That's why we have this working group, is to get this information out so people know what's going on. And you've done a great job so far. It's hard. This is not an easy one. But I don't think we should do anything to slow the process down at this point at all. We need to push on.
Oh, and I'm sorry, just one more comment. In the permitting, whatever we decide with regards to, who can come to where, who can be where, rotation, whatever it is, that wherever we land, I do think there should be local preference. I mean, and we give local preference to contractors. Why we wouldn't give local preference to in this type of arena is beyond me. So I don't know what council's feeling about that is, but I do think if we've got stakeholders in our community, we should be giving them preference to stay in our community.
Yes, Mr. Hurst, this has come up before, and I haven't discussed it with you, but what event, do you remember, Chris, what event that was? I met you guys out there. Was it Food Truck Tuesday? That was Arbor Day. It was Arbor Day. And these guys, 1, 2, 3, all 3 of these people right here, Mr. Sherman, these 2, they were back over here in the back 40. They were back here. Well, everybody knows everybody comes into the park up front. But there's all this empty space up there that these guys were relegated back here. And if we're providing preferential treatment to outside vendors outside of our city, outside of our county, I can't accept that. It should go, the queue should be our people within the city that are legit businesses first, and then outside vendors. Plain and simple. Plain and simple, that's the way it should be. Because these are our peeps. These are our people, these are our residents, these are the people we're supposed to ensure that they're getting their needs fulfilled in the city. So I hope we can...
Yep. We will work on this.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, can't comment right now, Mr. Sherman. So, Mr. Hanson, you have the direction you need?
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
that's where we'll make sure that council is done with their comments. I was going to go through what I have taken down notes to make sure we have your direction.
Go right ahead.
I agree with the local preference, Mr. Mayor. And I'm happy to go along with the schedule as long as Mr. Hanson believes we can get there in the time frame with getting everybody's input.
I'll do my best.
Well, this is our first shot at it. This is the first time we brought it up, and we pushed. I forgot when we said, "Hey, we need to talk about this," but this is what workshops are for.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead, Mr.
All right. So what I have is expanding to Industrial 1, accessory use for COM 1, 2, 3, and Industrial 1, while reviewing the reservation process. Look at adding what it says in the state statute about permits temporary kitchens for when their actual restaurant is under construction. Look at the code and make sure if they are taking up parking spaces, they still have to meet the bare minimum for parking spaces within our code. Making sure that staff gets cost recovery for permits, allow more accessory use, local preference for food trucks. What I did want to ask is this council looking for direction on when we're writing this ordinance is that, hey, just allow them to use a parking area and kind of like I think one example was Home Depot kind of lined it off, or are you wanting to move with the direction of actually having a slab on these places?
Oh, lining it off, I would think.
That's what I wanted. I thought I was getting that, but I didn't actually hear that actual wording.
Well, and I think that's probably, I may be jumping to a conclusion, but I think that's probably where this is going to go with Michael Hansen now knowing that we want accessory use, because completely different concept when you're talking about principal versus accessory.
So kind of look more of a lining it off designated area and less of a designated slab use. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So just to clarify, with the accessory use aspect, with discussion about in parking lots, what I'm envisioning right now would be having an area designated on a site plan that has a whole area that the food trucks would operate in, but have a 5-foot internal buffer of that area where food trucks couldn't operate outside of that to ensure that they're not impacting any kind of vehicular traffic.
Yeah, I think you would have to have that for safety.
As long as they're not interfering with the flow of traffic and, safety is paramount, but that they're not interfering with the operation. And I'm sure Home Depot or Lower, any other organization, if it's interfering with the flow of traffic or interfering with their day-to-day operations, they're going to nix it to begin with. So,
Or people aren't going to go there. There are literally parking lots that I won't go to in this city because they're awful. So, I mean, again, let capitalism decide. Let the people decide based on everything. It's our job to keep people safe, but, the people will decide where they want to go and where they want to stay away from.
So are you good to go, Mr. Hanson?
Yes, sir.
G to G. Everyone, if you're a food truck vendor, make sure Mr. Hanson gets your contact info before you get out of this building.
And thank you for being here. We really, really appreciate it.
And thank you, Mr. Hanson. Nobody's beating up on you. This is our first run at it. Don't worry about it, brother. We got it. We'll get it done. Okay, we're going to move on to our second presentation, proposed amendments to Chapter 5, Transportation, Connectivity, Access, and Parking of the Land Development Code. Yeah.
Man, you give me some specialty fries or tater tots. Done.
Fish tacos.
Oh, yeah.
Ponset, the Ponset lady.
Really good one that's by the courthouse that I always go to.
The lumpia lady. Filipino food, lumpia and ponset.
Empanadas. There's a really good empanada one.
Oh, empanadas too. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Fong Wing, Planning Manager. I just want to say a few words relating to the previous item. In order for us to work with the
Public comments over on that item, sir. No, go ahead.
Sure. With the vendors, we will not be able to bring it back in November 19, so we're going to move to December in order to bring the items back. But we heard your directives and what you would like to have. I think part of that is basically less cumbersome, less prohibited for vendors to operate. And I think we can come up with a few strategies in order to provide you for that. For example, we may look toward major plaza that has major tenants there. That's a possibility. To allow that, and also to be less financial burden in terms of permitting, and also but still provide the city cost recovery. So we'll bring that all back to you. I have also asked Ms. Brittany Kershaw to get their contact information. So I think that's what they're doing out in the hall.
Thank you.
So with that, we're going to move to the Land Development Code, Chapter 5. This is the first workshop with you in a series of land use, land development code changes. Chapter 5 is the first one that we selected to present it to you. This is relating to transportation connectivity, access, and parking. So as you can see here, the amendments are based on the following. Recent update to the comprehensive plan. It will reflect or implement a goal, objective, or policy. And at the same time, we're going to look at to clarify the intent of the regulations where the current language is not, it needs interpretation or is ambiguous. And then we also going to provide any update to references such as statutes or the name of certain agencies have changed. But our focus is based on that, not to basically rewrite the LDC. So that's one of the things that we'd like to let you know. So with that, I'm going to go through each sections of the code that we make changes to. We follow basically strike through and underline as the process that we're going to move forward. So in section 5.0102, all developments shall provide transportation access, parking, loading, stacking, bicycle. So basically, we're also going to include e-bike and micro-mobility, and those will be defined in the glossary. In section 5.0201B4, we basically clarify the intent of the existing language, which is the strike-through. So instead of saying ensure that the use of local streets by through or non-residential traffic is discouraged, we basically say in a restricted manner, ensure that the use of local streets by design discourages pass-by traffic. So this is what happened. As you all know, Florida Park Drive is basically in its design is a local street, but it functions as a collector, and we want to discourage that.
How do you discourage that?
Well, then we would not allow that local street to either have a driveway connection if it's intended to be connected from collector to another collector. For example, a White Mill. White Mill does not have residential connection to it. It has side street connection. And it connects Pine Lakes and Whiteview, for example. Then we would prohibit in terms of when they design, there's no driveway connection to a house.
Should that be stated anywhere? Like what design features would be implemented or encouraged or whatever language you want to use so to discourage functioning as a collector road?
Yeah, well, it's defined in our code that a collector has no driveway connection.
Okay.
If it's basically grandfathered prior to the adoption of our code, then it remains there. But other than that, any design of a subdivision or any new area, then if it's designated as a collector, no driveway connection are allowed, only side street connection.
So this may be a small wordsmithing type of thing, Mr. Duffy, but I do think it's important when we're talking about what is basically our law on design and development. Should, rather than it say local streets shall be designed not to function as a collector road, read local streets shall not be designed to function as a collector road? Because we're talking about it not being designed a certain way.
Yes, thank you. I mean, we'll take suggestions.
We'll look
this
at
is our
that.
first step at it.
I just think that that's more clear, and I think that captures the intent of what you just described.
Correct, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what you just read is 5.0201B4. So.
No, it's B6.
No, B6.
The next one is 5.0204B. This is basically reflecting to be consistent with the policy just adopted. We're going to go from 50 dwelling units to 100 dwelling units. What we had used now is basically if you have a subdivision that's 50 units or more, then you are required to provide 2 access points. One is a paved access point. The other one we allow basically a stabilized access point as an emergency access point. Now we basically increase that to 100. So we would implement the same practice. The only difference is that we introduced the 250 dwelling units must provide 2 paved vehicular entrances. So because that is basically also recommended by the Institute of Transportation Engineers in terms of the numbers, roughly the number that would basically about 250 in order to justify another paved access point.
Why did we increase it from 50 to 100?
Yeah, through implementation that we, well, from the 50 basically because of the concern back in the fire in 1998. And so thereafter, the city adopted the 50 units. But in terms of practicality and in terms of when we look at fire services, the 50 is basically very restrictive number. In the state fire code also provides that is looking at 100, not 50. So we want to be consistent with that in order to provide that. So,
okay, thank you.
And then this one in 5.0204F, basically we move from 4 feet in width for the shoulders to 5 feet, and that's very consistent with DOT's implementation of their streets as well, instead of the 4 feet. The 4 feet is the remnants from, past regulations. And 5.0302B3. Here's where we basically look at an issue that if the construction of a sidewalk is not currently feasible or practical, then we allow them to pay into the sidewalk fund, but however, we would require them to design and indicate the location of the sidewalk that is going to be connected in the future. Part of that also, in order to do that, if they are not the feasibility of it is that if they cannot be placed on right-of-way, then we would need basically access easement within the private property. So those basically due to maybe geometric constraints or due to wetland constraints, for example, or for example, years ago, DOT would not allow construction of sidewalk on their street. So that's part of it is that we would able to collect the fees for the sidewalk into the sidewalk fund until at such time we could use that as a leverage to DOT to get funding, for example. So that's the change there.
Sorry, are we making sure that where it says generally such facilities shall not be marked to attract bicycle traffic, are we allowing somewhere in our code for there to be some type of language where we are protecting bicycle traffic? I just want to make sure if we're removing this from somewhere, there's somewhere else in our code where we provide for facilitating bicycle use and things like that in a safe way.
Yes, we have that.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you know where that is? Just so I can compare and contrast.
That would be in the Chapter 2, the transportation policies.
Okay. And then, so we currently have the Sidewalk Improvement Trust Fund, right?
Yes.
Where, do we know what that fund looks like, where the monies have gone, how they've been utilized, et cetera? I've never heard of reference to that fund. I know they exist because we have, the one in Jacksonville has a ton of money in it. And actually there was a big dispute a while back about their utilization of it, et cetera. Didn't even know we had one of those. So any information that we can be sent as council to know what that looks like, how it's been spent, how it gets paid into, et cetera, would be really helpful.
Yes, certainly. We can provide that to you. Basically, we will come back with also sidewalk and trails master plan, so you can see the overall network of sidewalk and trails. and you will see the gaps within the city limits as well too. So part of that is that to implement the gaps as the first priority, especially the sidewalk that are nearby school. So we're going to provide that as well. So we'll present to you on that, as well as how much is currently in the fund and what we had used it for.
I'd also be curious as to how often it's actually paid into versus constructing a sidewalk. And the reason I say that, if you look at the language following, like the underlying language, which I guess this is what you've added, it seems that for the most part, sidewalks are going to be constructed. I mean, can you give an example of when sidewalks are not constructed? Obviously, an infill lot that's not on the sidewalk side of one of our residential streets, but any other example?
Yes, yeah. For example, Citation Boulevard extension, they provided part of the road network. They provide sidewalk on the north side from basically continuation on the west near Belterre all the way to Seminole Woods. But the sidewalk on basically fronting the Seminole Woods, since currently we don't have the sidewalk on the west side of Seminole Woods, but our overall master plan is that we're going to have that connected as part of the plan. So in terms of, they have an option to whether they want to go ahead and provide that sidewalk to nowhere right now, or they can basically provide us the funding, and they chose to provide us the funding. So
That was a dispute, actually, sidewalks to nowhere. Look it up in Jacksonville. It was crazy. Like, you'd have people build or construct, like, literally 10 feet of sidewalk and it would just drop off into a culvert. It was crazy. The other question I had was, when is the last time we looked at or we did an evaluation of what the amount to be paid in is? And I asked because I want to make sure that the cost of constructing is actually what is being paid into the sidewalk fund.
yes, well, for many, many years, we charged approximately about $30 per foot. And I basically requested a change to that about a year and a half ago to stormwater, and then we reevaluate the cost that was previously how much it would cost. So currently we charge just over $55 a foot.
And do we know what the cost to construct a sidewalk actually is right now per foot?
If the builders or developers are there already, then the cost would be a lot less than $55, because this also includes mobilization in order to have that cost. Right?
And where is it dictated that it's $55 a foot right now? That's a linear foot, right?
Yeah, that's a linear foot,
Okay.
based on basically 5 foot wide sidewalk and 4 inches thick.
No. I'm sorry. Where is it codified what the cost of the in lieu fee is?
We have it in our policies that basically, as part of the regulations that we provided to them, that is updated, depends on the cost. So we recently updated about a year and a half ago.
Okay. I guess my concern is that it will sit on the shelf for quite some time. We know how volatile construction costs are, how much they've gone up. I want to make sure that we're requiring enough to be paid into the in lieu fund in order to actually fund sidewalks when we need them.
Yes.
So to the extent we can codify it, maybe in this section, maybe in chapter 2, whatever it may be, and then have a policy like we do with so many other things, i.e. it's to go up by the rate of inflation, CPI, even if that's construction CPI, whatever that looks like, or if it's evaluated every 3 years, so that we're making sure we're not getting behind on what we're collecting from builders for these fees.
Yeah, of course, we can introduce that and codify that. That basically is going to be reflective or amended as needed. So
I don't want to make a unilateral decision. Do we have support from council on that? Okay. All right. Thank you.
the next one is 5.0302C. Basically, we changing from 8 foot and 10 foot back then for trails to 12 foot wide. The reason for that is that we can basically be competitive in applying for the Sun Trail Fund from the state. 5.0304B3, this is just to clarify the original verbiage. on corner lots, driveway shall not enter the right-of-way within 25 feet of where the two right-of-way lines would intersect, two rights-of-way lines intersect, basically, and if extended. So we changed that. Basically, we eliminate the word would and if intersected. So now is read, on corner lots, driveways shall not enter the right-of-way within 25 feet of where the two rights-of-way lines intersect. So basically, to make it, to clarify that. And then 5.0304B5, there rarely, but there were basically have requests for turnaround, and this is not in our code to specify what that turnaround area is. So if you basically, typically most houses would have a driveway, but some of them would like to ask for a turnaround. And then in this section here, it allows for a turnaround, but it doesn't specify the size of the driveway. So we basically provide that is basically turnaround shall be a maximum of 9 feet or wide by 18 feet long.
You're talking about an oval driveway? That's what you're saying? It's a like half oval driveway?
Oh, no, that's this is not. Basically, you see the driveway, you would have a flare just like on the side, then that's just a flare. But this one, basically, if you, they would have basically a perpendicular area, so they can back out into that and drive outside without, that's the turnaround area.
Got
it. We rarely see it, but they do ask, and we just want to make sure, put in our code the size of it. Yeah. And 5.0402A is the parking table that currently it reads like this: 2 spaces per 100 storage units and a minimum of 4 vehicle boat storage spaces. And it leaves for interpretation. So we just want to clarify that. It will read now, minimum of 4 spaces required for any facility, storage facility, a self-storage facility, or mini warehouse facility. And the facilities providing more than 200 storage units require an additional 1 space per 50 units, and storage units include both indoor and outdoor RV boat storage spaces as well. So we count all of that in order to provide this. So the intent of this is basically for for people who want to go there and basically park outside in front of the protected space so that they have some vehicular parking. So that ends the changes in Chapter 5. Next steps that we basically going to open up, we already did on a website on Social Pinpoint. We asked the residents to provide us comments back. And we also opened up for any other changes that you would suggest to make changes. And that, for example, this morning I just remember our provision calls for nice parking spaces for drive-through, and it starts at basically the order window. Now we have several developments that comes in. For example, Eliano's Coffee. We have Chipotle's that is basically coming in, but they don't have an order window area. So because everything is basically on mobile apps, and so there's nice spaces behind the pickup windows be very restrictive. So I'm going to basically introduce that the next time, that maybe reduce it down to only 6. So just to let you know. And so the schedule for moving forward is that staff will present other LDC chapters in the coming months. And we'll program that. We basically will schedule that for you. And workshop on follow-up amendments as well. So what staff is doing right now, we compile all suggested recommendations, and including basically BEAC and PLDRB as well. And then we will put it to you at the end of the day. We provide to you the a matrix that includes all the comments and then how we address those comments, and we'll bring it back to you. The reason we're not going through asking you to approve this at this time because of the legislation, Senate Bill 180, because basically Senate Bill 180 says that you cannot have processes that will be burdensome to the resident or to builders or developers, but it doesn't define what burdensome means. So we'll going to wait for the spring legislation to see what will be changed or if any, and then we'll bring back to you in approximately in July or August of next year. At that time, if it's well defined what burdensome means, then we may basically only going to introduce to you the changes that will be reflecting that. So changes that be more restrictive or more burdensome, then we would not introduce that to you.
I've heard March 16th is the date we should be looking at as far as when we'll know what proposed legislation.
March 18th. Thank you. Yeah.
March 16th.
16th? Yeah.
I looked in the actual LDC itself, and I had some questions and comments. So on page 4 of 19, this would be under 5.02.04D. It says all residential and non-residential development that abuts an existing or proposed trail system shall provide pedestrian and bicycle links to the trail system, quote, unless it would not be safe. 2 questions. Are the proposed trail systems pursuant to the current master plan?
Yes. It should be, for example, the trail master plan right now we have is basically Lehigh Trail, and then we also the one along Oak Kings Road. For example, we originally our alignment on Oak Kings Road from utility down to connect it to it was a lot closer to Toscana and Hidden Lakes, but the residents opposed to that, so we modify the alignment to be a little bit further to the east in order to go down to connect it down to Lehigh. So yes, it's going to be based on that.
Okay, and when will we have the new proposed master plan to evaluate, like you were discussing a few minutes ago?
We are about 90% completed, and then we basically part of that. I will present it to you, the new master plan. We still also working with the county and other cities just to basically, if they have a master plan, sidewalk or trail, then we would like to have a point of connection to them as well. But I think part of that will result is that we're going to have basically multi-year budget requests in order to finish out the master plan.
Okay, and then how are we defining what would or would not be safe, and who makes that decision? Would it be the developer or staff?
I think in conjunction with both developers and staff.
How are we defining what would be safe? I mean, it sounds like a silly question, but I think that if we have certain criteria that is already put into place, then great. If not, we should maybe think about it. Again, looking for consistency across the board.
Sure. I don't think it is well defined what that is, so we'll look into that. Yeah.
Okay. And then on 502.05D, it says trees may be permitted in the site triangle at the discretion of land use administrator if trees have a single trunk and foliage is kept trimmed. Who maintains trees after they're put in? So, for instance, there's a lot of areas in the city where there's overgrown trees, shrubbery, et cetera. Some are in private parking lots. Some are in easements that come over the road. I mean, where is it defined who is to take care of vegetation once it's put in?
If it's privately own subdivision, HOA would be, basically
Okay.
will take care of that. If it's within right of way, then Public Works would take care of that. Typically, we don't want shrubberies like more than 3.5 feet because of the, it will block the site, driver's site for a typical, sedan. And we don't want, a cluster of trees that basically also block that vision. So that's the reason why we added that.
Okay. And then moving on to page 5, we talked about affordable housing up here, design concepts that could make single-family homes more affordable. If you go to section 5.03.04, it's talking about garage standards. If you look at subsection A1, it talks about single-family homes with less than 1,200 square feet having a one-car attached garage, and duplexes with less than 1,300 square feet having at least one car attached garage. I'm curious as to why those are different, and whether or not, and then if you go to 3, matter of fact, it says a townhome with less than 1,500 square feet shall have at least a one-car garage. So just curious as to why the difference, and whether or not in our effort to make home ownership, which I think is important to state, home ownership more affordable, are we happy with this as it's written?
Yeah, so let's take a look at the townhouse. Townhouses are typically 2 stories, not one. So if you have a townhouse, then typically the square foot would be, basically larger than a typical single one-story house. And that's one of the reasons why we look into that the differences between that. But I don't know originally the intent behind it, other than basically I can only can tell you about the townhouses. Apartments, and single family, why we allowing basically less than 1,200, for example. Currently, if it's a single family, we require a minimum of 1,200 square feet, and with 2 car garages, not one. So if they are in that type of zoning district, they would have to comply with that in order for it to work.
So then shouldn't it read single-family homes of 1,200 square feet or less? If our minimum is 1,200 square feet?
Yes, our minimum is 1,200.
Because pursuant to this, then we'd never have a one-car garage. Because this reads single-family homes with less than 1,200 square feet, but our minimum for single-family homes is 1,200 square feet. So this doesn't apply to any single-family home currently.
Probably not, right?
Okay, so we probably need to change that language.
Yes, yes.
So it should read single-family homes of 1,200 square feet or less, right? Should have a one-car garage. And then you said there wasn't really a reason why the duplex reads this way?
Yeah, I don't have the...
Does council want to make those the same? If we have a duplex that's 1,200 square feet rather than 1,300 square feet for a one-car garage?
I have no problem with it.
That's okay.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we have comments from builders questioning that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
If I may interject.
Of course, Mr. Papa.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and members of City Council. So we received these comments also when we went to a Planning and Land Development Regulation Board. We had members of the county's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee attend that meeting and provide such comments. What we've stated to them, and the comments received here are great, is that as part of a package, you will see a larger series of code changes that would be particular to affordability and attainability of housing. So these comments are great that we can at least address. These are for Chapter 5 of the Land Development Code, but I think what you'll see moving forward, and you'll see the other chapters, of course, also, but somewhere in our process, we will probably have a presentation that would just be focused on the affordability and other code changes, and maybe some strategies too that would be specific to addressing affordability or attainability of housing. And that would be based on data analysis and a study that's being completed right now by our consultant.
Yeah, our consultant, JB Pro, is working on the affordable housing study, and we anticipate that we will have the data back like toward the end of December, and then we will schedule to present it to you approximately either late February or March relating to that. Once we have that, we're basically going to have a series of code changes that are affecting in other chapters affecting that, and we'll bring it back to you as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I had some questions on the necessary parking for commercial. So if you look at the chart or the table that you all have in here, specifically where it says shopping centers, discount superstores, and multi-tenant retail centers, which, by the way, it references footnote 1, and I don't see footnote 1 anywhere, so I don't know what that says. But for the multi-tenant retail centers, it's got one space per 250 square feet. But if you look at the different types of tenants that could be in this multi-tenant retail center, they vary from 100 square feet to 250 square feet. So I'm wondering if we should lessen that maybe to 200 square feet to make it more on average. And I only make that recommendation because I know in listening to a lot of our commercial developers, that is always something that they question as far as, the site plans and things like that, or the parking requirements. Quite candidly, I mean, everybody knows my position. I always say go with the more restrictive to make sure the development is done, top tier. But in this situation, if a standalone would only require 5 parking spots per 150 square feet, why would we be making them go with 5 parking spots per 250 square feet in this scenario? So I'm wondering if maybe we need to lower that to 200 square feet, or if you all had a reason why, specifically for multi-tenant retail centers, we kept it at 250.
Yeah, we will look into that. Typically, our Institute of Transportation parking generation is one of the industry standards we are looking at. Typically, what we would allow developments to come in is basically they will come in as a shopping center. Mm-hmm. So a shopping center is all inclusive because sometimes they don't know what they're going to bring in, what kind of tenants they're going to have there. So we would allow them to do that in order to provide, a site plan that would provide those parking requirements. Or they can basically, if they have kind of know, let's say 50, 60% of what the tenant's going to be, you will see that in Flagler Landing that will come to you, that basically they have about half of them already have tenants. Then we will base on those type of tenants in order to calculate parking demand for the entire site.
Okay. And then I would just make sure, Mr. Duffy, this is more for you. Footnote 3, it reads a little contradictory to the table, so just make sure we have consistency there. It references the amount of parking spaces for the uses. I just want to make sure we're not, it's just very clear. And then, sorry, I know I have a lot, but this I look at this the same way I did the comp plan. It's just really, really important. If we go to the next page where it talks about flexibility and the land use administrator being able to authorize an adjustment in the total parking requirements, I don't want there to be, I guess, because it says where it's demonstrated that the application is inappropriate. I mean, that's so subjective. I would say to no more than a 10% deviation, so that we don't have somebody, come in and be able to create a bad situation and it not have to comply with the codes because somebody thought that it didn't, that something specific was demonstrated. So I would just suggest, and I'll leave this to council, but I would suggest that, sure, there can be a deviation. There's got to be some discretion left to staff, but that it not be more than a 10% deviation downward.
Yeah, just to let you know what we currently do. Is that in our code allows basically, we don't want under accommodation or over. So we
Right.
allow a 20% over the
Okay.
requirement. And if it's under, then they basically would have to provide us three similar sites in order to justify the reduction in our requirement. So that's what we currently implement for that flexibility. We call it flexibility parking study. And so if you would, you think, that you, based on the limitation on a 10%, typically is basically going to be, and remove that 20% over, then we can add it to that or make that change.
I think if what 20% is what you are currently using, that should be fine, but let's codify it. I mean, if that's a policy, policies are so easily changed. The reason we have these, again, is for predictability and consistency. So I would just say if 20% is what we're currently using, let's codify it and say that we're defining it right here.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know what periodic overflow parking, what the definition of that is, because there's, allows deviation based on periodic overflow parking. That's not defined. And then we are also, in paragraph 2, we're not defining public benefit. So it says the land use administrator may approve de minimis variations of parking or design standards if it's determined that a substantial public benefit would be attained. How are we defining public benefit? Those types of things, I think, just need to be more clear, because we're allowing ourselves to codify something that then has subjective changeability that doesn't come before the electeds. And so then we're giving bureaucracy, no offense, the ability to make decisions that are outside of the hands of the people, essentially. So I just want to make sure that we're codifying or defining these things. So defining what periodic overflow parking means, defining what a public benefit is. I think those are really, really important.
Certainly, we'll bring it back to you. Typically, overflow parking, periodic overflow parking is typically applied to a churches area. So,
Okay. And then just two more high-level questions. In this specific chapter, are we defining multifamily as commercial or residential?
It's commercial.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I think there's some confusion as to what types of requirements apply to multifamily, because sometimes it's defined as multifamily or multi-residential, and then sometimes it's defined as commercial. So making sure that we're very clear about, about how that's defined. Then the last thing, I don't know if you all hear it, but I hear it all the time, and I also agree with it. Our commercial parking lots are a nightmare. And I constantly am told, well, it's, the developer comes before us and designs something in accordance with our code and our requirements. If I never have to go into another Publix parking lot again in the city of Palm Coast, sign me up. Okay. Is there anything that we can do from a design perspective while we're in here, relooking at these things to make these parking lots more accessible and better and just flow better?
Since the
I do. I live right by Island Walk, and it is awful. But it's not just Island Walk. So, but you're right. Yes.
Just to get further, I looked into that when I was at the county, and I was told, but I never saw it in writing, that some of this is done by the sheriff and the police force to inhibit the ability of someone to move around too quickly if they're trying to escape or something like that. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I didn't make that up. I was told that.
Interesting.
Sounds like a lot.
Well, I'm just saying that there may be a little more to this. So before you answer, is there any truth to that? That the law enforcement has some say in how those parking lots are designed?
Since I work here the first time, and then I skipped for a period of 14 years and I come back, I have not have any participation from the sheriffs relating to, site design. But typically in site design, we look at to reduce conflict points. That's the primary look at it. And we also look at stacking spaces. So those are the things that the two main, in order for traffic flow better, is that we look at that. And we also look at access points. So number of access points is important in commercial development. And I'm not sure what had panned out in Island Walk there. That it's quite constrained, probably because of the site, and they want to squeeze in so much development in square feet there that basically that happens. But in newer subdivisions, we basically look at the flow and the stacking and the number of access points are very crucial for the flow of the traffic within parking. Yeah.
Okay, looks like we're not getting a reprieve. And then just an FYI, if we do move forward with the food truck, I presume we will, there is a section that'll need to be changed. So on page 13, F2, I think we'll need to change that to accommodate for food trucks. And there may be other sections as well, so just kind of keeping that in the back of our mind as we move forward with food trucks. And that's everything. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else from us? Any direction?
I had a comment whenever you're done.
No, go right ahead.
Long, you mentioned the affordable housing study. Just as a reminder, we agreed a few meetings back that when that study is done, just to run it by the Affordable Housing Committee, and I'm happy to coordinate to assist with that, just to get their input before we bring it back to council.
Yes, we reached out to them already. We, have invitation for them to attend all the LDC chapters.
Okay,
so
great.
If they wish to do that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll remind them when I head to the, that meeting this afternoon. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we're going to open this up for anything else from the council? We'll open up for public comment, and then we'll follow up. Anyone for public comment concerning this item? Seeing no one come forward. Anything else for the council?
I want to make a general comment to our residents. This is really important stuff. As we look at the LDC, I look at this the same way again as we did the comp plan amendment. I know we have public meetings that we're allowing residents to go to and kind of be present to hear what's going on, what could be changed. I really, really want to encourage more resident engagement. I say the same thing about the charter. I think there were 2 people at our last charter meeting, which is crazy to me. So just, I know, Brittany, you're pushing things out to the public as far as getting engaged, but this is for so many of our folks who have issues with the way that things are developed, built, regulated right now in our community. This is your chance to really, really make your voices heard. So please, please, please keep an eye out for the meetings and the workshops and things like this where you can come and make public comment, because we do go through it, I think, in grave detail. So just kind of a shout out to our residents to please try to get more engaged.
How many meetings have you had so far, Fong?
Yes,
Public participation.
We have 3 so far, 2 with PLDRB and 1 with BEAC. So BEAC will bring them chapter relating to cultural resources, environmental, and architectural, and then tree protection. But we only have been presented to them the architectural chapter, chapter 13.
How was the attendance? Are people showing up?
There were about 5 for the BAC, and then PODRB, we had a little bit larger crowd. I think probably about 10 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let's move on. if that's it, any further? Are you good, Fong?
Yes, sir.
Got us you need?
Thank you both for your work.
Okay, we're going to move on to our final public participation. Yes, sir, Mr. Webb.
Mark Webb, Palm Coast. And for clarification, I had several people reach out to me after a previous conversation. We were talking about the Flagler Landing and the 38 acres and the big box stores and all the conversation that you guys had. And there was something that was shared that confused some of the citizens that have approached me. The aspect of the need to expand SR 100 is driven by the need or the issues or the traffic load. Who knows what the magic is that we get the state to come in and give us the money to do that. But there was this takeaway from some of the citizens that felt that we, the city, was allowing and moving forward with this big box store. And Vice Mayor, you caught very quickly the amount or the increase in the impact of that to bring to light the need of the city to get the state to help us with 100. So the takeaway from the citizens were, are we truly allowing an increase, a slowdown, an impact purposely to get the state to come in to fund the money for the expansion of the 100? Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that is the perception that a lot of the citizens feel that have approached me, that says that this seems to be consistent with some of the actions that we know we have a problem with Belterre, but we got to wait till it meets a certain threshold before we can hit that guidelines. And I know that Ty was very, as he's involved and has just recently been put in charge of that, it's important that you guys let the citizens know that you're aware of the problems we have now, that you're trying to be aware of it, and the intention to make it worse, as in with bringing the big box store in next to BJ's prior to getting the funding or the need to fix it. So I just wanted to present that to you as kind of an opportunity to clarify and understand you're aware of the problem, you know that 100 is overloaded, and that we at the city cannot fix it, and we need outside help, but we're not willing to cut back on adding more traffic. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one come forward, we'll bring it back to the dais. Any follow-ups? Chief, you got anything?
No, sir. Well, I apologize. I do have some. I'm going to follow up with Mr. Webb after.
We're not intentionally
No.
trying to let people build just to get the state to come in to fix the road. No,
Absolutely
that's not the way
not.
it works. A lot of those projects are 10, 15 years out. So you guys, anything on that?
Mayor, I'm sorry. I am going to just speak to that just for a second. And I'm not the full subject matter expert here, but it's my understanding that the project he's referring to is in the county today, and that they're seeking to work with the city in a way that would allow us input. And so in that process, but they don't necessarily have to do that. At some point, we will have to work together because they're going to need the water. But I think at that point, we have to provide it, I believe, is the requirement. In that process, certainly, though, no one in city government is hoping to make a problem worse so that way we can get dollars somewhere else. That's definitely not a thing that the city of Palm Coast is ever trying to do.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from City Council as far as comments? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Discussion of matters not on the agenda. Council? Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask, just get a follow-up update on from Mr. Hurst on the just trying to find an alternative way ahead with Ralph Carter Park. And I know that he did look into and Laura met with he did look at some options with the school district. Can you speak to that, James?
Councilman, I think that I might have the latest update. I spoke with the acting city manager today, and I circled up with Mr. Hurst this week as well. Parks and Rec have done an inventory of the available spaces in the city, and unfortunately, there aren't existing available spaces inside of the city. And then with council's consensus, Mrs. Johnston reached out to our contacts with the school board, and the most recent update from the school board is that all of their field space that is lit is committed to the high school sports or the high school athletic or their other programs. They do have some space that would be available for a future opportunity behind Buddy Taylor Middle School, but currently we don't have funding budgeted to make any improvements to that area where we could potentially have the multi-use type fields related to soccer or football or something like that.
Councilman Gimbar may help with this, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want to figure out a way to find an alternative way ahead.
Yeah.
I know whether it's short term, long term. It's a daily email. I get daily email traffic from residents that are, that you're just not happy, with the noise, with the light. I was thinking back to the short term rental discussion, and where a lot of the residents came and were complaining about the noise, in the C section. And I'm just hoping that we can find an alternative way ahead that we can all agree on, so it's a win for our sports league and a win for our residents. Because we, as you said, probably 4 or 5 times today, Vice Mayor, we are trying to be fair and consistent. But, for the residents in the R section, it doesn't feel that way. And so this is why I'm continuing to see if we can find a way ahead. But anyways, I'm done.
Yeah, no. So I've continued to field complaints about this. We don't have enough field space. We're losing out on tournaments, which means we're losing out on tourism dollars, which means we're losing out on revenue for the city and the county. So I know it's a problem from a different perspective. I literally talk to people about resolving this issue weekly. And at TDC 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we had Elite Soccer come before us and say they're literally kind of doing a tournament for a third of what they could be, which means we're definitely losing out on revenues. So and that's a county. Fixing this problem can help the entire county. So the way I look at this is we need, since based on Chief Berryhill's update for us, we need to figure out where we're going to put more fields. And the fact of the matter is, if you listen to the county meetings on the sports complex, that outlook's not looking so great right now, at least not in the near future. So we don't have in our current budget monies in our capital plan for fields, but we have the ability to change that. We have the ability to look at our capital projects and say, we're going to move things around to accommodate this. Then we have to think about land. We have Track 17, which originally was intended to be PSP. So that is a huge swath of land. And I have spoken to Mr. Zobler, who's not here today, but I've spoken to him about carving out just 10 acres, because 10 acres would really provide what a lot of these leagues need, even to do tournaments. I think that they've told me anywhere from 6 to 10 acres would be very helpful. And Amy Lukasik at the TDC has had this discussion with me as well. So I think maybe, having Mr. Zobler present us with kind of a plan to, rather than going out for and I think we are out for RFP right now on the entire Track 17. Right. But what would that look like if we carved out 10 acres for some fields and some type of, I won't call it a stadium park, but some type of tournament facility.
Sports complex,
whatever we want to call it, so that we can bring in more teams, more tournaments, and make those accessible to our local leagues as well. So if you all are on board with that, maybe during a meeting where he's present and we can talk to him and acting city manager about that option, then we should do that, because it is a problem. It's a problem for a lot of reasons that we seemingly don't have a solution for. So we're going to have to create a solution here.
Right. Now, I think it's a great idea. I want to move forward with an alternative way ahead that we can all agree on, and so that it's a win-win. But you're getting the same emails that I am, and we're just trying to be responsive to our residents as best as we can. But I will tell you, parking is still a problem. So if Rick Staley's listening, parking is still a problem on Rimfire. And it's not safe. There was 9 o'clock at night, there was a whole trail of cars out there. This past Saturday, as one of the sports leagues was out there. Parking is still an issue at Ralph Carter Park. So just a lot of things to tackle, but just trying to find a positive way ahead. And it'd be great if Mr. Zobler can come back and offer up options and what that would cost. And just have a kind of light at the end of the tunnel for our residents, for all parties involved. I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Speaking of short-term solutions, additional lighting at existing fields.
Yeah, at Indian Trails
is a real short-term solution that would help. And maybe do a kind of priority list And that would be, something we could.
That's a good idea, too.
Thank you. You
Can we
guys,
look at that, Chief?
As I was going to ask, can we get some type of direction from council set so Chief and Mr. Hurst can, prepare staff for some type of response or presentation?
Well, I like the presentation from Mr. Zobler. I like that idea.
as far as track 17,
As far as track 17.
or carving out. That carve out.
Correct.
Yeah, and then maybe looking at costs for lighting at ITSC.
Additional lighting.
Did you have something, Councilman Sullivan? I did. That was it. That was it? Vice Mayor?
I do have a few things. So, first, I want to congratulate paramedic firefighter Ozzie Sine on being named our Kiwanis Club 2025 Firefighter of the Year. Really appropriate, being that it's National First Responders Day. And I do want to thank all of our first responders. Chief, please pass along our gratitude and continued prayers for our Palm Coast Fire Department, our Sheriff's Office, our Flagler County Fire Department, all of our ancillary police departments, and just everybody, all of our first responders. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you to your families for their sacrifices as well. I was very sad to read about the loss of Cairo, one of our service dogs. He's an officer just as much as the rest of our officers, and so my prayers go out to him and his handler, Master Deputy Marcus Dawson. They're always together, and Mr. Dawson is a great guy. So thoughts and prayers for him and our police department. And thank you, Mayor, for mentioning Cairo during the moment of silence. A couple things I just wanted to point out. So I know, we constantly are harping and giving a hard time to stormwater. It's been a challenge, and I commend the last council for really deciding to dedicate monies towards stormwater and improvements. And we put a lot on Lynn Stevens' shoulders as far as, finding ways to grade more swales, clean out more culverts, what are the solutions that we're going to come to. And so we got a report, it was actually in the city manager's report, I think from September. And so I expounded on it to see what is the difference in the amount of swales we've been able to grade and the amount of driveway culverts we've been able to clean since some of the new policies and procedures were instituted, and it's quite astounding, actually. So the graded swale miles in 2024 was 41. In 2025, it was 55, so quite a difference. And the amount of driveway culverts that were cleaned went from 3,434 in fiscal year 24 to 5,256 in fiscal year 25. So what she has implemented, what that department has implemented is working. They're doing a great job. And for me, when I say, okay, we're going to dedicate tax dollars to something to see an actual ROI and a deliverable come from that is great. That's what you want to see from your local officials' decisions and then the staff that goes behind it. So kudos to stormwater. And then also want to compliment one of the events that we had this weekend, Booling for Wishes. It was a sold-out event, and it raised $30,000 for our Make-A-Wish Foundation of Central and Northern Florida. So great community event. I think it was their third year. Please keep an eye out for that. They're doing it around Halloween every year. It's the first time I've seen a T-Rex bowl. So if you want to see an inflatable T-Rex bowl, definitely look out for Booling for Wishes. But it was done by Oceanside Realty. I think Realty Exchange, Oceanside. They did a phenomenal job. It raised $30,000, which was just super exciting for me to see. So thank you to them and for everybody who came out in the community to support such a wonderful charity. So thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. For me, I wanted to talk with Mr. Duffy. We had the discussion about possibly getting in on the lawsuit for the SB 180. And I think Mr. Duffy's recommendations is that we should entertain that. So how many did you say are currently in it, Mr. Duffy?
There are currently 25 municipalities between cities and counties that are entering it. One city just withdrew was Deltona.
Okay, so...
so I think only one city in Volusia, and that is Edgewater. That's part of the lawsuit.
So
there is another lawsuit that's with 1,000 Friends, but I think that has one municipality that might be Orange County, but the other lawsuit has about 20 to 25 municipalities in part of it.
Okay, so I would look for some consensus from the council to move forward with Mr. Duffy's recommendation of getting in, contacting that firm and being part of that lawsuit, because we can't continue to allow for our home rule rights to be eroded by the legislature. And if it's going against the state constitution and the way our constitution is set up, I think we need to be a part of that to fix it, because we are a prime example of when development has been too much for a community. And I think we need to seriously consider that. So I look for consensus from you guys. Yes, sir.
Just one comment. Is the Council of Cities for Florida doing anything?
They're not part of the lawsuit,
Well,
but
I
can look into
suspect
that.
At some point, they will be, and you get a little more power that way. So whatever is the best route on this, I totally agree, but we want to take the most effective route.
So if I may, because I was just at Florida League of Cities for their conference this past weekend on Friday and Saturday, and there was a whole discussion, like 3-hour discussion on home rule, or lack thereof lately, and current legislation, imposed legislation. And I can tell you that there are a ton of lobbyists right now that are really, for the League of Cities, that are really pushing to have SB 180 and also Live Local amended. Now, Live Local is going to take some time because the speaker was Pasadomo. This was kind of her baby, and she's just kind of outgoing, so they're giving some time before they attack Live Local. But I want to say again, nobody, I don't think, speaks about home rule and local autonomy more than I do, but I do not suggest we get in this thing. I am in touch with our officials at the state level so often, and there are 3 things that they recognize and are very confident will be changed. One, the scope geographically of it being 100 miles within that disaster area, they're very confident that's going to change. And then 2, the 2-year limitation. Well, both the 2-year and the 1-year limitation, as far as, it's going to be in place for 2 years and for 1 year, depending on the scenario. So that scope is going to change. Also, they understand and agree that the unduly burdensome language is vague and ambiguous and all those things that make it unconstitutional. So before we spend tax dollar monies, and also keep in mind, because it's, the type of election, help me out here.
Midterm?
Thank you. Because it's a midterm election. The legislative cycle is early. So again, by March 16th, which is 4 months away, 5 months away, we will know exactly what the proposed legislation is going to be. I just think we save the taxpayer dollars, we keep our name out of that lawsuit for now, and just wait, because there's a ton of outcry on this thing. There will be changes to it. If there aren't, I will admit that I was wrong, and I will say, let's take it to the helm. But I don't think with everything else that's going on, with all the other cities that have jumped on this thing, I just don't think that's where we put our political capital as a city.
So that was going to be my question, the cost. And that doesn't preclude us from going up to Tallahassee and lobbying against the bill, right?
I talk to our officials all the time about it.
Yeah, and so
The cost to join the lawsuit is $10,000, and that's a non-refundable fee. And then it'd be $5,000 if we choose to join them if it gets appealed, and then $5,000 if we choose to join them to get appealed up to the Supreme Court. That's what that firm is offering.
And then do we have to pay hourly on top of that, or what does that look like?
What I have seen, it's a $10,000 retainer, shouldn't be hourly. The $10,000 should cover that, but when I reach out to the firm, that's something I'd want to confirm.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, I'd want to confirm that too.
So we can hold off on it. I just with the advice of our other counsel. So we can hold off, but we need to be prepared for that because we can't allow this to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to get any better. We've had one site plan approved administratively. And Lauren said if any others come up, she'll bring them to our attention. But we are a prime example of when it's out of control. So just keep that in the back of your minds and watch and see what comes out in early March.
I agree with you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I'm not happy about what's going on. I just, as far as when you think of the political atmosphere of things, you know, we need help from certain representatives for water and flooding and all of those things. Think about this. Every single politician in Tallahassee signed SB 180. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace, but they did it. And as far as what, you know, us knowing and being confident that there will be changes made, I just don't think that we join a lawsuit that attacks all of them, knowing that we're going to need certain help from them in the future. So I think just, again, thinking about the political capital versus kind of what we know is likely to come down the pipeline as far as changes.
So we're in consensus to hold off until this legislative session gets started and we figure out what's going on?
And I think Laura from the Southern Group will obviously keep us well informed. They did a great job last year of keeping us updated, so I think we lean on them.
The League of Cities will help too.
They are, yeah, they are.
If it goes that far, they'll get involved. Okay.
Yeah, again, if we can have the same net effect without we as a city having to spend money.
Right.
But if that effect doesn't occur, we drive on.
We got to be willing. We got to be willing to step up for the taxpayers and do what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thought on it. Mr. Attorney, you have anything else?
No, sir.
Items from the attorney. Acting city manager.
Assistant to the assistant.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Mayor. Just really quick, thank you for recognizing firefighter paramedic Ozzie Sine. He actually got promoted since then, so he's driver engineer Ozzie Sine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And no, it happened like this
Rank
week.
him.
It happened this week, so we didn't include it in the press release. He's been a great member of our team. I just wanted to so thank you for recognizing National First Responders Day. We're really grateful to our partners with the Sheriff's Office, all your firefighters that are committed to delivering the best service to our community every time. Our partners with Flagler County Fire Rescue, Flagler Beach Fire Department, Bunnell PD, and Flagler Beach PD. So thank you. And our first responders in the county dispatch center now. It's no longer with the Sheriff's Office, but the county dispatch center. So thank you to all of them. And then just a reminder this week, we have a fun event at Fire Station 21, Thursday and Friday. I should know how many in a row it's been. It's in the 20s, 25th year.
As old as the city.
That's awesome.
Of the Hall of Terror at Station 25. It's fun. It's probably not fun for your smallest kids, but it's fun it's family fun. It's clean fun. It's free fun. And so it's a great event at Fire Station 21 on Thursday and Friday night.
Right,
and then for all of our community to be safe, as we will have trick-or-treaters out in the streets on Friday. So just remember, we'll have a lot of traffic out there, so let's be safe.
All right, thank you, sir. One last note, Vice Mayor. We have the vote on the commercial ordinance on the 4th.
Oh, I will be here, and also
6 p.m. That's 6 p.m. meeting.
Yeah, and I looked at the contract, by the way, that one contract that Mr. Gibo presented. That contract was, I guess, approved back in 2020 initially. It didn't seem that there were any further changes. I know Councilman Gambaro, you had offered to kind of raise a flag, so I wasn't going to be here. I will be here. My trial was continued, but I didn't see anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the contracts, as far as you could tell, was straight, and that change order was fine. But you will be here for the vote.
I will be.
Okay. Anything else from the council?